It's a small thing. It's
Yeah.
here, but it's rather small.
It's not going to stay small.
We
I'll
have
tell
the
you that.
cook problem instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, lucky everyone's out running around in the forest all during the summer, but as soon as people come
By
back
the
to it,
way,
yeah.
regarding COVID, Tokyo has announced state of emergency until mid of August. With that, they are going to ban all spectators from live events. So not just in Tokyo, but Saitama, Chiba, and Kanagawa. They are
So
not going to have live
what does
audience.
that mean for the Olympics, though?
Well, I guess these four main area around Tokyo, right? They are not going to have live
Oh,
spectators. So I guess it's still on TV, but the medical professionals are still trying to ask them to stop, not to proceed with the Olympics. But the IOC chief is already in town. So he said he wants to visit Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Well, I don't know who is going to bring him, but I'm sure somebody will. But we'll see. If he still want to go ahead with the Olympics, I guess most of it will be telecast over TV.
Tyler just tweeted, it's got more details on the Olympics, so no spectators.
yeah. Well, it's such a weird Olympics to do it without spectators.
Yep, he's pushing it. The Thomas guy from IOC.
Okay,
Hey, Tyler,
yeah.
the Delta thing was the number one story today on CNBC this morning, and
Uh-huh.
they're blaming it on the whole decline of the market that you see, the stock market going down and Bitcoin going down and everything going down. There and then even the fact that the Treasury yields have been going down. They're blaming the whole thing on Delta. That basically the market's
Oh,
starting to pay attention to the Delta virus now.
So Ken, I don't know if so the is it the Delta variant that you're talking about? It came into UK. Oh, by the
yeah.
way, we had a
Yeah.
60,000 people in Wembley yesterday, all hugging and cuddling.
Yep.
Don't worry.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't
yeah,
worry
yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Cuddling?
Right, right. There's even though it's been around
It's
for a
just
while, the one that's obviously it's been around the world. It's apparently the U.S. stock market is finally paying attention to what's going on in the rest of the world. They're also getting more concerned about it in the United States because we have a large portion of the United States, depending on what pocket of the country you live in, that's not vaccinated. So
it tends to be primarily in the stupid areas where they are not vaccinated. It's an interesting correlation. But
Stay home
yeah.
and stay safe. Delta and
Oh,
Delta Plus are screwing up the world, and what's about to come is not good.
yeah.
Trust me on this one.
You heard it here 2 weeks ago.
And then they're saying Lambda, which is right behind it, is even more crazy.
It's worse, Chris. It's
And
it's
and
uh,
and and so
Peru, and then God knows where else it's going.
can I take a 2 minute, just like a personal anecdote about this situation? Like back in 2019, I'm convinced we got it here in Los Angeles. And what was unique is, I work by myself pretty much. I'm a one-man band type prototype guy. And my wife works at a big company. And so anytime we get sick, I'm like, you brought it in, you brought it in. My life switched gears. I became a stay-at-home dad, and I was literally sick like every week because I'm around kids all day. And when we got sick in October, November of 2019, this thing hit us like a truck. And I have a roommate, and he never gets sick. And he got it. And what was weird about this one was in this house of 5 people, we all got it again, meaning we got sick, we got well, and then we caught the same thing again, like where you were back at day one. And I said to my wife, like, man, whatever this is, it's very mutagenic. And 2 3 months later, we have this COVID thing. So that's the main point people don't really get is every time a virus touches DNA, it replicates. It's like making a really shitty cassette tape, and you're making copies of a cassette tape over and over and over again till at some point it becomes a different version of the song, and that's the variance that we get. And this happens still in vaccinated people as well, which is the most troubling part because the mutations are not the viruses aren't optimized for every mutation. And this when you look at like the virus's evolution, it's so crazy as you see it like branch out. Like you could almost trace it to every person it touches. Like I think the technology will exist where contact tracing will go all the way back to the DNA level. And what's scary about that is, if you want to argue about vaccinations and all that, masks, that's fine. But wait until the American insurance system gets fucking involved, and they tell you that you need COVID insurance to go out in public, and that if you don't have it, they're gonna find a way to sue you if you get somebody sick out in public. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Welcome to Jeopardy, everybody. Well, thank you for that, Chris. I'm your host, Alex Trebek, and I'll take COVID killing everybody for
It's a new one.
500, Alex. Yeah, it's not. I appreciate Chris's point, because if we don't, you either pay attention now or you're going to pay later. Pay now or pay later. So
Yeah, we have another important news from San Francisco that I DM'd you, because this is really
okay, well, I got the
important for the
perfect music.
Bitcoin
Go ahead.
history. I DM'd you.
Go ahead.
It's a funny link. Apparently, someone has you have a statue of Gandhi in San Francisco, and somebody has put laser eyes on Gandhi. I tweeted that to Tech News a couple of minutes ago.
Is there penalty
No.
for vandalization?
I have no idea.
But we just need to find the original tweet so I can tweet the original tweet. But here,
I sent it to you directly on a DM on your account as well as the CC2TN. Oh, sorry. That was rubbish. Sorry. I will try to find it.
We are evidence-based here, by the way.
Cheryl, nobody will arrest. Cheryl nobody will arrest anyone in San Francisco.
Yeah, in Singapore, if you vandalize, you get stopped.
So I took the photo and I put it in our Tech News Twitter account and I just shared it. So if you go to TNATW, which you can see on my face here in Clubhouse on my photo, that's the Twitter account where we share everything in real time, including this photo of Gandhi in San Francisco, now with glowing red laser eyes. And indeed, no one's going to jail for that, because no one's going to jail for anything in San Francisco at the moment, as we've discussed. That's part of the reason lots of people are leaving, is because it's become a lawless wasteland. I'll take incompetent district attorneys for 500, Alex. Chesapeake.
I heard that the jailing actually happens on the other side of the border in Tijuana or something. I heard something about that.
That was me and Jared. Anywho, welcome to Tech News Around the World. We're going to jump through the big, hot, heavy headlines here at the start. And while I do that, because that's going to take us 10 to 15 minutes to go through the big headlines, that the big ones, by the way, are not the most interesting. Sometimes they are, not always. But we're going to go through them because these are the headlines that your idiot cousins and aunt and uncles are talking about. And we're going to help you get up to speed so you look way smarter than everyone else at the next family barbecue. So let's do that first. And while I'm doing that, other people in the audience and on stage are going to be finding their own favorite headlines and to share on stage in about 10 or 15 minutes from their part of the world, professionally or geographically, or if they're kind of reclusive or shy or introverted, then they can share them via Twitter from their own Twitter account. Just include our Twitter account as part of their tweet, TNATW, then we get notified and then we can retweet it to our ever-growing group, list of beautiful, fabulous followers, and which you can follow as well. And you should follow the Twitter account at TNATW so you see all of these fantastic tweets that we're going to share in real time. So without further ado, let's kick off with the biggest headline at this moment is from Politico and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal and TechCrunch and The Verge and Politico and Mac Rumors and The Hill and Reuters and everybody else. It's a very political thing about the 36 attorney generals from 36 different states and DC for a total of 37. If I have now filed an antitrust suit against Google, and this one, because there's two others, but this one from today is targeting Google's monopolistic practices within their own app store, which is called the Play Store, and the practice of making app developers use its billing system and charging its 30% commission, which some developers don't like. But some developers more than others don't like it. Matter of fact, some developers actually don't mind it. And you know who doesn't mind it is the really small app developers who no one's ever heard of, because it's just free money for them. It's they're getting 70%, which is better than 0%, because now the App Store is essentially free distribution for your app that no one's ever heard of, which is great if you're small and no one's ever heard of you. But if you are a big, big, big app that everyone's heard of, and especially if you're an app that people have heard of before they ever bought a smartphone, like Adobe Photoshop, like some big video games that existed before, Android, then you're not really getting any discoverability or any real additional visibility by being in that app store. Everyone already knew about Adobe Photoshop before they ever had an Android phone. So Adobe's understandably a little perplexed as to why they need to pay Android 30% of all of their revenue, all of the sales, to an app store that, their own users didn't really need to use. Their own users used to download them directly on their laptops. Why couldn't they just download them directly on their smartphones? And in reality, they could. But the Google and Apple are not really publicly letting users know how easy it is to do that. It's actually, if you know how, not that difficult. The problem is they're keeping it intentionally. They're keeping that door kind of secret and hidden. However, now that this suit has now come to life, I predict, and it's a very easy prediction, that Google now is going to start letting everyone know, oh, hey, everybody. Oh, you're suing us? Oh, did you know, by the way, you don't have to use our app store at all. You can go direct. Now that they've been caught in this kind of the crosshairs of this, antitrust suit. And by the way, Google has already made an official statement about this suit, and here it is. Google says antitrust suit by the 37 attorney generals targeting their Google Play is meritless, as it ignores Android's openness to allow competing app stores and side loading of apps. And what is side loading of apps? Well, that's the technical term for you downloading the app directly from Adobe or from some game that you like or whatever, Candy Crush or whatever. So now Google's saying, hey, what's the problem, everybody? We let you download direct. There's just a door right over here. Oh, we didn't tell you? Oh, shit. Oh, my bad. My bad, everybody. The door's right over here. Oh, goddamn. Oh, you guys thought we were just controlling everybody into our app store? Oh, my bad. What an honest mistake, honestly. We meant to tell you there's this other way that you could download all these apps directly. And you guys, you didn't know that. Jesus. I'm so sorry, everybody. Egg on our faces. This lawsuit is meritless in essence, because you can't really accuse them of making everyone go into this app store when technically there's a direct path, right? So it's like telling the parking, there's a paid parking lot and then there's street parking. And previously, no one knew how to get into the free street parking. Everyone was paying to go into the parking lot. And everyone's suing the parking lot company for making it, because there's no other option. And then all of a sudden, boom, presto, bango, there it is. The free parking that was there the whole time, they had kept obfuscated because it exists in their app, but they intentionally didn't want you to know about the free parking. But now they do want you to know about the free parking, because now they're being sued for having, this monopoly of forcing apps into their paid parking, forcing you into their paid parking. And now they're very quick to say, oh, no, 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 no. There was free parking here all the time. You didn't know. Here it is. It's right here. You come back tomorrow. It'll be right here. I promise. Go ahead and do what you want to do. And now it's going to be interesting to see how this court case plays out, because Google has known for a decade that this lawsuit would come. This lawsuit, this App Store monopoly lawsuit, they've known someday this would come since the day they launched Android. They knew this would come, and they knew what they would do when it came, which is hide the free direct side loading, free parking lot until they start complaining. And once they start complaining, bingo presto, here it is. You didn't know there was a free parking lot here? It's right here. You just park your car right here. It's totally free. You don't have to pay the 30% tax no more. Tomorrow, any day. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's right here. No problems, everybody. It's all good. Free parking for everybody. And except, of course, for the apps who want the visibility of being part of the app store that still benefits from it. Then for that, of course, you're going to pay a 30% tax. So it's kind of a lot to do about nothing. But it's that welcome to, do no evil, as Google's headline is. Do no evil. Yeah. What about that? So, Chris?
Someone put in a tweet, "No evil do." It was funny.
So, there's a related headline about a survey, a report that just came out from ComScore saying that not only do you have the apps in the App Store that you download, right? Your phone from Apple or Android comes pre-installed with multiple apps, right? Like a dozen, 2 dozen apps that come pre-installed, like, and those are either the Android or the Apple apps. Like there's a default mail app, there's a maps app, there's a calendar app, there's a calculator and a clock and a music app, and what else you got? You get the idea. Weather, and a phone book. Those default apps in Google Android and inside of the iPhone, according to this ComScore report that just came out, that those apps always end up winning. They're the most used apps in those categories. So the default weather app on both platforms has the vast majority of the market share of weather app. The default calendar app also is the largest calendar app in both platforms. The default voice recording app, again, same. The default Maps app, again, it wins in both cases. So this ComScore report says, hey, these guys really do have a monopoly, because all of the competitors, because there's a dozen calendar apps, there's a dozen mail apps, there's a dozen weather apps, they're just getting fucked because it's an unfair, because it's an unequal playing field. The apps, the Apple and Google are starting on third base. Everyone else is, has to hit the ball and get on first base and second base and then third base. It's totally unfair. And that isn't so interesting. Everybody knows that. That's just common sense. What is interesting is who paid for this research and this report, which is one Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook. And why would Mark do that? Because Mark hates Apple and Google, because Apple and Google, a month or two ago, they're in the process of, but it started a month or two ago, both Apple and Google know that Facebook is built off of the cookies that come from your devices that track you everywhere you go, but are in your phone, essentially. And they don't want to share those cookies with Mark and Facebook no more. And they know that stopping that, which they're in the process of doing, is fundamentally going to be a tremendous financial blow to Facebook and Mark. And Mark is furious about that. In fact, he took out a full page ad in the New York Times saying, these guys are, the worst of the worst. This is absolutely criminal, and they're hurting small businesses, and yada, 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 yada. And Mark is notoriously a ruthless gangster in Silicon Valley, that if you screw with him, he's going to screw with you back, 5 times more. And so this report is, is evidence of how gangster Mark is.
And he's gonna jump on his hydrofoil and grab that flag.
He's going to jump up and down like a madman on his, hydrofoil. And but he's got his own whole new plan B with the social commerce thing, which is just starting to roll out. And I think he'll do just fine, but he's clearly bitter about all of this. But potentially, we here have been watching the headlines every day as we do. And one thing we've noted is that it was quite miraculous how the US came up with their 5 antitrust bills, largely aimed at Google and Apple. It does involve a bit of Amazon, and Facebook had their own FTC, Federal Trade Commission antitrust lawsuit, which just got tossed out, by the way. So now that got tossed out, literally 48 hours ago, now this report comes out that Apple and with evidence showing that Apple and Google are more there's some data to support the claims that Apple and Google are being monopolistic with their platforms, sponsored by Mark Zuckerberg. But this could potentially help solve the riddle of how is it possible now that just as America was coming up with their antitrust bills, in the same 2-week window, so did the EU, so did then the UK, then Germany, then Japan, then Spain, and one other I'm forgetting, all within a 2-week window, all decided separately to file these antitrust suits against Apple and Google and whatnot. And who's whispering in their ear to do that all simultaneously? And now we might know why. So, because Facebook is the least worried about monopoly, because they don't really have any kind of a monopoly other than on having all of your stupid friends in one place. That's the only real monopoly they have. So, anyway, that's another interesting point. The New York Times is saying there's a book excerpt shows the deteriorating relationship between Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg, who some Facebook executives feel misjudged key political events. And the company they built is wildly successful, but her Washington wisdom didn't hold up, and neither did their close working relationship. And, I don't know if anyone has a thought on that. The only thought I have on that is Cheryl is clearly brilliant. Mark's clearly brilliant. But when she came on, Mark was still quite young when Cheryl came on. It was a little more of an adult, had a lot more kind of boardroom experience and in corporate governance experience, which has no doubt been invaluable in the development of Facebook, which Mark no doubt appreciates and understands. But now Mark's kind of a big boy wearing the big pants at the big table. And so I don't, maybe it's the same thing happened at Google, by the way, where you had the original Google founders took a back seat, sat at the kids' table, and Eric Schmidt ran the company for a while until they got big enough for their big boy pants, and now they're running the company again. And then they became Alphabet, and then they let Sundar Pichai run Google while they're running Alphabet. So anyway, the other big news at the moment, and we did the first 2. Number 3 is crypto financial services company Circle says it is going public via a SPAC merger at $4.5 billion. That's pretty big valuation for Circle. The deal's value Circle 4.5. Circle is going public in the deal. The values of crypto financial services, blah, blah, blah. That one's honestly not that interesting. What is interesting in crypto is this next headline. Visa, the credit card processing company, is partnering with 50 crypto firms, exchanges, where people buy and sell Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these crypto coins, including Coinbase, which is by far the biggest place where people do that, buying and selling of cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, to allow Visa users to convert and spend their crypto holdings, and says that $1 billion was spent via crypto-linked Visa cards in H1 because Visa partnered with Coinbase for the Coinbase card. And what they realized is hey, why don't we, as Visa, connect all of these crypto exchanges where everyone's holding all of their Bitcoins and Ethereum and all their Dogecoin and all this crap? Because these people would love to have a way to spend their crypto when they go to Starbucks or to 7-Eleven or anywhere, really anywhere. So Visa has now made it possible for all of those places. They say they have 50 plus, and no doubt they're going to offer it to all of them, so that when somebody who has a Visa card goes to any shop where Visa is accepted, and we're talking 70 million locations. That's everywhere. So now anywhere Visa is accepted, you present your Visa card and you can choose that it be taken out of your crypto holdings wherever you're holding them, on Coinbase or Kraken
Tyler?
or wherever you happen to
Ty-
have them. What's up, MA?
hey, Tyler, it's MA. It's very interesting that you're bringing up the topic. I wasn't able to comment on it this morning, but Visa's a bit ahead of the curve against MasterCard as well, because Visa's in Europe. And just to kind of pop the bubble a little bit, Visa has been the main provider of the card since 2017, which means the Visa logo, which is a retail product, has been sitting with a lot of crypto banks and innovative banks since 2017. This is them, like you said, just realizing that if you can't beat them, join them. And they're really noticing that MasterCard's probably working a little slower and more conservative, and Visa's just jumping ahead of the race, right? Because Visa's a well-known marketed product in Europe, and MasterCard is a bit second. But when people see Visa, it's so well-renowned in its branding. And I've actually used Revolut used to have Visa. And now Revolut has Revolut now, I'll check the card, but I think Revolut now has MasterCard, but in 17 it was Visa. And Wire, also out of Germany, was also Visa, and Crypto.com is Visa. So this is not really new news for anyone that's in the crypto space, because it's been happening as a slow drip. But now you're seeing that, absolutely what you just said, Tyler, now with Coinbase going pretty much balls to the wall, they know they're going to have an entry point to millions of merchants worldwide, and MoonPay connects to Visa and MasterCard and Apple Pay. So they're really looking to sort of take the game of the credit card brands, like, basically Visa MasterCard battle. I'd be very curious to see who's going to have the most stuff. This is all said and done. Which one will come up being the one that has the most business that will be linked to crypto? Will it be Visa cards or will it be MasterCards?
So then I have another question for an expert, which is mobile. Signal just launched a coin called Mobile, which is supposed to be a way of paying for things on Telegram. So how are these coins going to is everyone going to have to exchange one coin for the other to buy things on any app? I'm not sure how the interface works.
Dr. Francine, it's a very interesting question, and I'll answer it quickly as best as I can. But you're always welcome to send me messages if you need clarity. Another topic that I spread this morning, which Tyler, I tagged you in, because I thought it was really funny, because I actually came up and found the story before Decrypt reported it and before Faraz reported it, which is basically, Polynex was 2018. Then it was bought by Circle, and Circle was a startup funded by Goldman Sachs. And now all of a sudden, Circle's going to IPO. So let's call the writing on the wall. Dr. Francine, it will have to end up going to a stable coin. And now that's why I'm circling it to the article, right? Goldman Sachs was the funders behind the company Circle, which purchased the Polynex exchange back in 2018. And for those
Poloniex,
Polynex, Poloniex, Polynex. And they were heavy in the United States, and people really loved them for their ease of exchanging. But alas, those Bitcoin maximalists back in the day and even now would probably err on the side that we all knew that the Circle was funded by Goldman Sachs back then. And now Circle's coming out because Circle's the one using USDC coin, the USDC coin. Now, when you talk about that particular coin on Telegram, they have to peg it to something that's going to be valid in the financial industry, which in essence is USDC or USDT. So we'll have to change into a stable coin because the value that it has will only be valuable in fiat if it's able to be transferred or converted. I hope that's answered
Aaron,
your question.
Hold on one second, Josie. Welcome back.
I also
Aaron's used to work at. Oh, go ahead, Francie.
Well, sure it has, but who's going to go through all these machinations, or how many years will it take for people to understand what these machinations even are? to convert to a stable coin so that they can, trade out in a Starbucks or whatever.
Well, now comes the Visa. We circle it back to Tyler's news about Visa, because if you have this on your Visa card and it could take from any one of your coins, Dr. Francine, then obviously if you have a wallet like Coinbase and all your coins are on there, basically if you go to the coffee shop like Starbucks and you tap your card, it's going to take from whatever it's connected to on that card. And you could have 30 tokens. It doesn't matter. It'll just pull it from the card value on the card, no matter what the tokens are. They'll make it that it's on the back end, which all you'll do is tap it at Starbucks and it'll take
Aaron,
it from
did you have
wherever
a
you point
comment
it
on
to.
this being a fountain of endless knowledge on this topic?
Yeah. I'll jump in, Tyler. I don't want
Beamed. Go
to
ahead. Go ahead.
I don't want to make it too boring. We're yeah, yeah, you do.
We
It's
all
putting
have
on
to
the
learn
jazz
this.
music.
I think we're taking lots of jumps and leaps from this. Where we're really at with Visa is Visa and MasterCard have what are called principal membership programs. Turn that
I
off. Turn that
love
off.
the music.
Aaron can't have the
And
serious conversation with the Jeopardy music in the background.
Come on, Alex. So the principal membership is when fintechs and the likes are get heavily audited and lots of due diligence from Visa, MasterCard to become issuers of their cards from a retail perspective. And what's happening, I worked for these in the past, I actually worked for MasterCard as well in the past. And what we do is the MasterCard and Visa guys work with these providers, okay? And some of them are major banks that we know, and some of them are plumbing companies like Stripes of the world that deliver these things. What Visa have done here is they're bypassing those principal members and bringing the exchanges on as members of their program. We started this with Visa 4 years ago using what's called the FinTech Fast Track. And that was a big marketing program. What Visa are actually doing here are catching up with MasterCard. So MasterCard have led this on the crypto side for quite some time. Visa are now playing catch up and a big
Aaron,
marketing. Yeah.
MasterCard, seriously, give me tweet me the first that you saw MasterCard. Tweet me the first one. I'm curious. Give
I
me a
think it was
date.
2014, first time we did it at MasterCard.
Damn
Yeah.
it, you sneaky MasterCard.
So MasterCard have been in this space for quite some time, and they've been a bit more volatile than Visa. Visa really held the
Correct.
line of
You're
regulation.
correct.
Yeah.
You're actually correct.
But yeah, listen,
Thank you.
it is a big thing, and just without going, and I don't want to get down to the USDC or stablecoin route yet, but to answer Dr. Francine's question about it is confusing when all these crypto things come on board. I think, Dr. Francine, what we're going to see is we will see companies like Wise, who IPO'd today, TransferWise IPO'd. They did FX transfer for remittances across the world of multiple fiat currencies. I think what you'll find is you'll find fintechs of the future will be able to aggregate all these different coins for us. And like Amy was saying regarding putting it into the Visa card, all of this will be done in the background and the exchanges will all be done for us. And us simpletons at the front will just need to tap our phones or watches or rings or whatever.
Okay, so Aaron, I love the Irish accent. Please don't tell me I was wrong.
No, you're right. You're right.
Is that an Irish accent? Okay.
It's a Dublin accent, yeah.
There you go.
Well, I've just asked on behalf of all the world's consumers, because more and more people, now that I have a rally coin, the Karma coin, the social token, everyone is asking me, how do I get into cryptocurrency? And I don't want to tell them, because even though I've been in it, since 2013, I would never put anyone into it yet, because it's like walking into a maze and you don't know how you're going to get out. I mean, I do, but that's after 7 years.
Dr. Francine, you have a valid point, and that could always be myriad of conversations that Ben and I do. I've been in the space since 2011, and I'm still sort of finding my way into the deep abyss of different programs. But yeah, that is the key thing. But Tyler, the bell, the oven, the cookies are ready.
Here we go. So
take it to the
other
next topic.
big stories of the day are two more here. The Dutch you guys, we were talking about this massive ransomware hacking, which one of the most visible victims was the Swedish supermarket chain called Coop. There are 800 stores which are now coming back online, reportedly from our Swedish friends. Any update on that, Johan? Are they back in action? Did Johan jump out? He was here a minute ago. So we will find out shortly. He goes in and out. So, but the interesting headline today is that a Dutch security group said it had notified Kaseya, the company that was at the heart of this, in April about one of the flaws that was exploited in the devastating ransomware attack last week. So it gave them a heads up that they had some fixing to do in their code. They had some vulnerabilities they needed to address. And while apparently they addressed the one that the Dutch researcher security group pointed out, they didn't fix all of them. And so there's that story. And no doubt there will be more. And it will be very curious to see geographically where the next attacks happen, if they continue to be predominantly Swedish and if they continue to be predominantly infrastructure, while Sweden's government is kind of reassembling itself. So the last big article, although there's that's again the more interesting ones are not the big ones, but that Donald Trump, 24 hours ago, almost exactly 24 hours ago, while we were here in this room, did a live stream of his own event in Florida, in what appeared to be he standing in front of the White House, although it wasn't the White House, although he certainly made an effort to look like he was standing in front of the White House, looking at the video that I saw. He had the flags and these secret service agent-looking gentlemen behind him. It was quite interesting. But essentially, he is instigating a class action lawsuit that claims Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube violated his and other people's First Amendment rights. And now, of course, every news outlet is calling lawyers, especially lawyers with backgrounds in these types of matters, to get their take. And the general take thus far is that these lawsuits are essentially PR for Mr. Trump and even fundraising vehicles for Mr. Trump to collect funds to bring this suit against these big evil social networks. And whether or not he actually uses the funds in the lawsuit is another issue.
Of course.
Was that Francine? Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler. Well, he's broke. And he will use the funds, to fund all his various lifestyle things. The lawsuits will be thrown out on day one because these companies are private companies. And this is not a First Amendment issue, and it's not a censorship
that seems
issue.
to be the consensus
Even
today with the legal folks who are being asked on precisely this, as Francine just said, that these are companies who have, although to the counter to that point, Francine, of course you're right. They are companies and they can kick people off, and they do all the time. And they have dealt with this lawsuits such as this before, many times, people suing on this precise point, and the social networks have won every time. Where this might be different is the class action angle of it, of trying to paint these private companies as public utilities, where public utilities are held to a different sort of standard and don't have Section 230 protection clauses. And so on the face of it, you're of course very right. It'll be curious to see if there's any tangential points that can be brought up in yeah.
Tyler,
Hold on
test
one
your
I
second,
can
mic.
I can
Test
Justin.
add
your
Hold on,
mic,
I
some
couldn't
Tyler.
hear what
background
Cheryl said.
here,
Would you?
Tyler. Basically,
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Justin.
Check your mic. Your mic is in and out.
yeah. So to add some facts here to this from a legal standpoint, the argument is rather fringe And what do I mean by that? There was a dissent by Clarence Thomas, who's a Supreme Court justice, conservative, making this exact argument that they should be considered basically public utilities in a Supreme Court case where I believe he was the only member of the Supreme Court to make this argument. And to really boil this down, I got into a discussion with it earlier this morning on this topic. Essentially, what Trump is asking to do is to change the First Amendment. So you can either do that through a constitutional amendment, not going to happen, or through a legal case that reaches its way up to the Supreme Court and ultimately leads into some type of ruling that reinterprets the First Amendment. Anything can happen, and nobody should predict really anything with much surety in politics, and especially in a court of law. But like you said, what legal experts have said, and also the silence from the other 5 conservative justices and the 3 liberal justices on this specific issue, despite it being raised by another justice, I believe 2 months ago, kind of would go to speak to the real minuscule possibility of this having any type of legitimacy, never mind being overturned by the Supreme
Thanks for
Court,
that. By the
but
way,
even finding its way up there.
At least he achieved one objective,
so
Tyler.
do follow
It's now
Justin.
all over in
We were
mainstream
just in
media.
his room right before we got in here, where he covers all of the political news, and including the political tech news, where I try and jump in from time to time. But I love learning about what's going on politically all over the planet, and it really helps to understand. Sometimes it informs what's going on technically from the tech news, and more and more as tech gets more and more political, as we're seeing with all of these big antitrust suits happening all over the planet. But I just do follow Justin. That room goes on for 2 hours right before this room opens, and you'll see me and Cheryl and lots of other people there. Jason.
Yeah, I just wanted to pose a question to Justin or to you, Tyler, too. Isn't a big component of this lawsuit, or like the objective of this lawsuit, to make it so that these social media companies lose their right to claim that they're a journalistic, free press type of platform, and therefore be subject to have to mitigate the comments that people
That's
put
right.
for slanderous offenses on their platforms?
I can take this. It's more so to
Right.
take away the immunity that they're given under Section 230. Right now, these platforms essentially have legal immunity due to a law passed by Congress. So it's really not a First Amendment issue. They can either change that through Congress, which would result to people like Mr. Trump having been banned far earlier in this process, far earlier, because by removing legal immunity, you're opening up companies to liability for what other people post, and they'll just start going banning people like crazy. So ironically, through the legislative mechanism through Congress, that's why it's not a reasonable or viable option to kind of stop this banning. The other way would be to kind of remove this ability of these content providers to moderate their content through giving First Amendment immunity. But again, from my understanding, not a constitutional law expert, this, from what all the experts are saying, conservative, liberal, whatever, is a rather fringe interpretation of the First Amendment. And I think it leads us all back to Cheryl's point, that President, and Francine's point, he might be broke. He's clearly desperate because nobody really gives a shit what he has to say anymore, aside from some politicians in the Republican Party. But mainstream media certainly
Okay.
doesn't care, and this
So
is a
a
way for
few
him to get
other
attention.
little, looking at the other gems here in the news before we get into the super interesting ones. WeChat, which is like the WhatsApp and even the Facebook and even the Tinder and it's the everything app of China, has abruptly deleted dozens of accounts of LGBTQ students and groups and NGOs across China, citing rules violations without providing further details. Although I got a little extra detail, which is they also deleted Didi, the big Chinese Uber, which was done at the request of the CCP in their continuing effort to completely demolish Didi, assumedly because Didi IPO'd, and then in hours later, the CCP came in and stopped anyone from being able to sign up for Didi, and then had it removed from both Apple and Google's stores, and then today had it removed from WeChat, because in China you can have apps within apps. So Didi exists within WeChat. In fact, that might be the most common way that it's used, but not anymore, because Didi was removed from WeChat and also Alibaba Chat. And so, in addition to WeChat abruptly deleting dozens of accounts of LGBTQ student groups and NGOs across China, they also deleted Didi at the request of the CCP. So if you put two and two together, you can kind of figure out who told WeChat to delete these apps. Even though Associated Press is claiming they don't seem to know who was behind it. That's cute. That's very cute that you would even say that. But other really interesting headlines is the Robinhood IPO, which is this very popular new app for buying and selling stocks without any fees. The usual business model of stock trading apps is they would charge you, $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 whenever you were buying shares in the company, and Robinhood doesn't charge those fees. Instead, they take your data, that sweet, sweet, juicy data, and they sell that data to other parties who have an interest in knowing what everyone is buying and selling in real time. And it turns out that business model, which is called payment for order flow, your orders is part of the overall order flow inside of their app, and they sell that order flow, and that is a very scrutinized practice that could potentially become banned by the Security Exchange Commission. And that would be a huge problem for Robinhood if deal for order flow, which is about 81% of their revenue, is based on selling that data. And if selling that data becomes banned by the SEC, then essentially they're going to lose 81% of their monthly revenue. And that's something to note in the days leading up to their IPO. If not for that, I would say I would be all in on Robinhood, because it's, as a user, it's an absolute joy to use, especially comparing it to the other apps in that space. Let's see. Should we go to the stage? There's a yeah.
Wait, Tyler, can I ask about, so doesn't Robinhood also make money from like the bid-ask spread? Is that
It might
the
be.
other 19% you're referring to
Well, then
for the revenue?
they might do that. I'm not intimate
Okay.
with I didn't look at their. Yeah.
From my understanding, the only money that's made is on the underlying ETFs that have an inbuilt spread. But other than that, they don't charge anything for fees. If there's any, and they don't do exotic derivatives or anything, they just do plain and simple trading on equities.
Damn, got it.
Right, correct.
But not exotic stuff, Tyler. Just plain options.
Indian social commerce startup, and we've talked a lot about social commerce startups. Imagine Facebook merging with Amazon, for example, and then you get the idea what social shopping is going to be all about. It's coming to America very soon. An Indian social commerce startup called DealShare raises 144 million, led by Tiger Global. That's right, you guessed correctly. If you follow us every day, you know the correct answer to who just funded some startup in Asia. The answer is always Tiger Global. That's a trick question. So Google is acquiring a cashless payment company called Pring in Japan for about $200 million-ish, and hoping to offer fintech services in Japan next year. And other interesting, Twitter says it will fully comply now with India's new IT rules. And this little drama has been going on for, my goodness, 6 weeks or 8 weeks or so. And it's gotten a little out of hand. And it's looking like Twitter might be forced to leave India because they've lost their equivalent of the Section 230 platform protections, where they actually are now responsible for everything that gets said on Twitter, and that's why they're boss, the Twitter MD boss of India, was brought into the police station, made comments, then resigned and fled, and they're trying to find someone to replace him. But understandably, that's difficult because whoever becomes the new Twitter boss of India is likely going to go to jail because they're responsible for everything that gets said on Twitter in India. So Twitter now says it will fully comply with India's new IT rules, has appointed an interim chief compliance officer, and will name a grievance officer by July 11th. Because yesterday the court was saying you must comply with this or else. That was the words, or else, without actually stating what that else is. And if you know what that else is, please DM me and let me know what India means when they say or else, because it's a little nebulous. And speaking of unicorns in India has over 1,000 funded startups and 10 unicorns in the SaaS sector alone, generating as much as $3 billion in annual subscription revenues. And there was a report today about the global analysis of venture funding. This means how much money is going into tech startups. And we've got the data now for global, we've got it for Europe and for India. And here are the numbers. So global venture funding for the first half of 2021, which just ended 8 days ago, is now a total of $288 billion in the first 6 months of 2021, which is an all-time high and up by 110 billion from the last 6 months of last year. So nearly a tremendous uptick in venture funding globally in the past 6 months. European tech startups raised about 74 billion in the first 6 months compared to 109 for all of last year. So we're already up here. If at the current rate, we will have about a 50% uptick, which is a tremendous uptick, by the way, for 2021 compared to 2022. And India had similar massive upticks. So tech startups are booming in 2021 as we are now. Go ahead.
Is there data from 2 years ago? I couldn't tell. I saw that same graph. I mean, either way, I think it's impressive, but I couldn't tell. I assumed there was a huge drop
There
in
wasn't.
like Q2
Yeah.
last year
No,
with the
at the
coronavirus. I
start
didn't
of
know
Corona, it
how
kind
it
of just
compared to 2 years
was,
ago.
it wasn't down and it wasn't a massive up. Net, there really hasn't been much of a down. But tech is getting into some highly monetizable spaces like edtech and medtech and insurance tech. So the future for tech at the moment is very, very bright because it's now got a good grip on fintech, and the fintechs are getting funded like crazy. And now the education tech companies are getting funded like crazy. And you're likely to see a huge VR boom happen soon as well, after Apple announces their VR headset, and it could get very, very crazy very soon. As a matter of fact, here's an Indian startup called Teachment, which lets teachers create their own virtual classes, just raised $20 million. And it doesn't say who, but I'm willing to bet Tiger Global was probably one of those investors. Let's see, opening up the article. Does it say Tiger in the article? It does. No, it doesn't. So maybe not. But that's one of the top headlines of the day. Teachment in India just raised $20 million, which is not at all a surprise if you realize India startups are raising a ton of money and edtech companies are raising a ton of money. So this headline that an Indian edtech company raised a ton of money is no surprise to anybody who follows tech news around the world every day, because both of those things are simultaneously true. And Xiaomi is in the headlines again, the China's biggest kind of consumer goods company. And I'm getting a bunch of comments that my mic is acting crazy. So hold on one second.
Yeah, it's just fluctuating a little bit. I didn't want to interrupt, but I don't know if you can do something about it. But if not, it's
You
okay. It's
just
just
reset it.
fluctuating.
Just reset it.
Yeah.
No,
I thought I had
I
finally
think I
lost the
think I
rest
should
of
be
my
okay.
mind.
So Xiaomi raises around
Yes,
1.2
good now.
billion in debt, and the money could go towards Xiaomi's international push as well as new areas like electric vehicles, which I'm looking forward to because they made that announcement nearly 3 months ago, and it's a beautiful looking EV that they have in mind. I really hope to see that happen. Okay, that's yes.
Actually, speaking of EVs, Stellantis Group. So basically, the conglomerate Stellantis that owns Opel and Dodge. Both of those companies have actually announced muscle cars. The Opel Manta. I'm not familiar with that car. The Europeans would be. But in the U.S. and North America, Dodge has announced that they'll be announcing a muscle car that'll be introduced in 2024.
One
I'm not
other
sure.
quick little
Yeah, so
point
those are two
is,
announcements that
what
came
do
out
they
this morning.
call it? TikTok is doing TikTok resumes, videos, so that, and they've partnered with 30 different brands, including Shopify and Target. And so now young people, or really anybody, can apply by making a TikTok video, which I think is absolutely brilliant and really should be its own startup, between, bridging startups and or not even startups, any company and employees, especially as we're now becoming more virtual anyways. You're not going to have as many in-office visits to do interviews, so it makes much more sense to do them this way. And you can get the matching algorithm where you can ask questions on both sides about what you're looking for. It's essentially Tinder for work. That's a huge opportunity that I'm just amazed nobody ever jumped on that one, myself included. It's still a huge opportunity, even with TikTok doing it. So anyway, let's get into the tweets, shall we? Yes, we shall. And here they are. Somebody just sent this one, and this is wild. Beijing asked Didi to change. Oh, it was. I want to give credit where it's due here. This one came in just now from Ramen in the audience, where we've been tracking this Didi IPO, which has been a wild ride. And Beijing's been cracking down on Didi ever since Didi bolted the barn and ran over to New York to do their IPO against the advice of Beijing. And so Beijing said, don't do this IPO. And Didi said, eat my dust, cowboy, and just ran, got in the chopper, and flew over to New York and did their IPO, even though Big Daddy Xi, the Xi-meister, said, don't do it. And they did it. And because they're bad to the bone like that those Didi folks, and they did their IPO, and then right during the 100-year anniversary of the CCP, by the way, what an interesting coincidence that is. And then as soon as the 100-year birthday party ended, Uncle Xi and his crew showed up and started busting down on Didi and unplugged the power. And the latest headline is that Beijing asked Didi to change the app's mapping functions over security fears. Ride-hailing group Didi received multiple requests from regulators before its IPO to remove sensitive locations. And the subheadline here says Didi staged the biggest Chinese IPO in New York since 2014, but its shares plunged after China's internet regulator announced an investigation into the company. Well, it did a lot more than that. It turned off the apps from Google and Apple Store, and then from WeChat and Alipay Chat, and they're just really trying to shut it down altogether. And that might have something to do with the stock plunging. But now this new information that China's internet regulator requested multiple changes to the mapping functions of ride-hailing group Didi's app before the U.S. listing, fearing it could reveal sensitive government locations, according to two people familiar with the company. The Cyberspace Administration of China frequently communicated with Didi, making more than 20 requests for changes to the app, which Didi implemented, said one of the people familiar with the matter. The Cyberspace Administration of China did not link the mobile app changes to any request to delay the initial IPO, the people said, and they had issued many rectification notices to companies without taking their apps down. But the regulator caught investors by surprise when they abruptly announced on Sunday that Didi's ride-hailing app had problems of seriously violating laws on collecting and using personal information, and ordered it to be removed from the mobile app stores. But yes, Karen.
Tyler, I know we're very critical of China, at times, but here, I mean, the regulators just been, warning. I mean, imagine if U.S. telling Tesla that you shouldn't be. There are so many flaws in your IPO. Don't go ahead with it, and you go ahead with it. So I think China has a point here. I know we're very critical, but think about it. They have given them a lot of warning. I know we love the narrative of how Chinese are very. I mean, yes, they are, but I think in this case it seems like there's something more
Yes,
to
there
this,
is. And David
right?
joined us in the previous session and really gave us the full deep cultural context, which is quite interesting. Essentially, it all starts with Alibaba. Well, it even starts long before that. It starts with Lenovo and the IBM ThinkPads, and believe it or not. And this is just the magic of David and his incredible wealth of knowledge of all things within China and tech, which he also, along with Justin on stage, do the politics from the Capitals room that I can't recommend enough. So again, do follow Justin. But David was filling us in that basically there's this grandfather of the internet of China, and it's his daughter who runs Didi. And they both know everybody there is to know, from the top to the bottom and everybody in between. These are the most connected, plugged in, smart people in the game. And so Didi's biggest investor is Masa in Japan. And Masa was the big investor in Alibaba with Jack Ma. And this essentially, to give you the short version of this, Jack Ma and Alibaba were going to do the Ant Financial IPO, which was going to be the biggest IPO of all time. And the government said, no, you don't. No, you're not gonna. We're stopping that. And Jack said, what? And for context, people who don't know, Jack Ma is like the Jeff Bezos of China, or the Elon Musk of China. And he's built not one Alibaba, which is like Amazon in Asia, but also Ant Financial, which is like the biggest fintech in all of Asia. So he built not one, but two of the biggest companies that China's ever had. And then they tell Jack Ma, okay, that's great. You made two of the biggest companies in the history of China. Now go sit over there in the corner and make some finger paintings and just chill out. And he said, huh? I'm the most ambitious, wild stallion of an entrepreneur this country's ever had. I've built two of the biggest companies. And they said, that's great. Go please make us some finger paintings over there. Can you make us a nice dolphin finger painting? And that's the headlines lately, is that Jack Ma is doing finger painting. That's literally the headline. And so when I say that Jack Ma's in the corner making dolphin finger paintings and little circus balloons, because the government's telling him, hey, Jack, that's nice. You made two of the world's biggest companies, but could you please just make my kid a little finger painting of some balloons and some shit, like maybe like a dolphin? Because that's what we want you to do now. And thanks for these two companies, by the way. We love them. Anyway, so the IPO did not happen. And then the biggest investor in that is Masayoshi-san in Japan, is a big investor in this. And so you've got Masa and you got Jack Ma, and now you've got Didi. And guess who's the big investor in Didi? Masayoshi-san in Japan. And he's already been through this game once before. So when they saw Alibaba get their IPO taken down, and they saw that the government was now cracking down on the big tech companies, they said, let's make a run for it. We need to go IPO in New York and get our money out of here. So as soon as they saw Alibaba's IPO get taken down, and the IPO was taken down in China, they said, okay, we're going to go run out the back door before everyone in here gets taken hostage, and we're going to make a run for it. So they made a run for it. And Arnold Schwarzenegger came in and said, get in the chopper. And they jumped in the chopper and they flew to New York to do the IPO. And they were told right before they got in the chopper, don't get in the chopper, don't do the IPO. And they said, we're going to run for it. And they ran for it. And they ran to New York right on the 100th birthday party of the CCP, when Uncle Xi was a little distracted with his birthday party. And during the birthday party, they did the IPO. And then immediately after the birthday party, here comes the CCP cracking down on removing their app from the app stores, from the other mega super apps, the WeChat app and the Alipay app, and cracking down big time. But the IPO did happen, and there was shares, or I should say, stock options granted for billions of dollars, estimated at $4 billion worth of stock options that we were not sure what happened to those. But it looks like they made a break for it, and it's a wild drama. But now there's this new headline that is related to the fact that apparently China was also perhaps correctly concerned that all of the geographic data that Didi has is data that China doesn't want out of China in any potential way, because Google Maps in China is rather useless, because China doesn't want you to have usable geographic data within China, because they feel that's sensitive information, despite the fact that all the other countries on the planet do it. So Didi having that data, they felt like they needed to make sure that data was secured before any kind of transfer of, information was taken out of China, which we're not sure how realistic that is, because all of Didi's data is in China. So anyway, really interesting development. So
I keep on going down Faraz's rabbit hole that if Didi's an American-owned company, even if the servers are in China, Cloud Act would apply. And that's my, pet theory. Oh, shut up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I speak of some wins for SoftBank? So SoftBank actually recently gave, as part of a new $215 million round with Clearco, which is a Canadian founded company by two Canadian entrepreneurs, Andrew D'Souza and Michel Romanoff. And Clearco is basically the ones behind they're trying to democratize financing away from like the VC style funding. So they're actually a market leader in this space. And now they were already in April, after a round, they became a unicorn in Canada. And now this round, they won't even disclose how big they are at this time. And as you know, the Masayoshi-san, it's a new Vision 2 fund, I think, Vision Fund 2. It was started in 2017, and their goal is basically to focus on late-stage venture capital investments. And this is huge. Because again, this company was pioneering this space where they're actually working the opposite extreme, where they're, unlike VCs, these guys are working at democratizing funds, and they also worked on I think it's called the 20-minute term sheet, right? That's when they actually started giving mini loans to online startups. Also in the same vein, I think someone else reported on a South American deal that SoftBank did as well. Do you want to?
I don't remember.
I'm not sure who did that. Sorry.
Okay. So,
Yeah,
but we do have a whole bunch of other headlines to jump into. The first one on my stack is from Kurum. You have this one about the Saudi versus the UAE rivalry taking shape amid OPEC spat and competing hubs.
Yeah, this is actually, this is stirring up like world economy big time. We discussed, 7-year high fuel prices here in the US. And it's not just about the fuel prices. Now the dollar is appreciating. And I actually did another tweet on dollar appreciation. That's going to have an impact in terms of the overall cross-border, business. So yeah, that fuel price is actually
So I've been
impacting
told
pretty much all this
by
there in the
somebody I
market.
think knows, I'm quite certain they know, that this is a completely staged event that has to happen every so often. I can read it without reading the source of the individual, perhaps, because I received it as a DM. But essentially, they said that this is performative because if these two are too friendly all the time, then they need to keep the appearance that they're not friendly. They need to stage a friendly fight from time to time. Yes.
The Tom and Jerry dilemma. Basically, Tom and Jerry are friends, but in order for Tom to prove his existence, he has to pretend to hate Jerry.
That's true, but let me just quickly tell another thing. So, I mean, historically, both have been sort of dependent on the oil, and that's how the whole, economy has been run in both countries. But lately, I mean, France can actually comment more so on that, but UAE has actually come out of that dependence in terms of the oil. And now they can say, and they have got now diplomatic relationship with Israel as also. So they are actually looking into build many more measures on that regard. So that is also an element that, the guys in UAE says, okay, fine, do whatever you want. We're not going to actually produce oil anymore because we can survive by ourselves.
Right,
So
which is there's the
there's
new
that angle
pipeline with
too, by the way.
Israel. And so maybe the UAE feels like they've got their own thing cooking and they don't need to play so friendly anymore. I understand your point. I'm just telling you what somebody. Yeah, go ahead, Hannah.
And the
Yeah,
pipeline,
that's it. Correct.
the pipeline is actually for
Correct.
Europe, though, right? It's an Israeli company that started it. Yeah.
But one other thing, Tyler, if I may, I think Saudi Arabia also and UAE and oil producing companies, countries, I mean, they're looking at the conversion away from the oil and gas industry into alternative energy sources, and they
Hmm.
planning for the future next 20, 30 years into diversifying their country portfolio. And I think this could play into Saudi Arabia's attempt to, or vision, 2030
Hmm.
vision, with the new projects and diversifying into other trade, non oil revenues. And the biggest challenge I think that they see, even it's in the region, is the UAE being the hub for trade for the whole, most of the Middle East, not the whole the Middle East. So I think yes, they are allies most of the time, but also if you look at closely what the new regulations that came out of Saudi Arabia, trade regulations, they're almost targeted to UAE exports to Saudi Arabia. So I think there's also a trade level to it as well,
Okay.
aspect. I just,
So
I'm Sam and I'm
thank
done
you,
speaking. I just want to
Karam,
share
for
that
sharing
point.
that one. But you also had a separate article, although related, which is why the U.S. dollar continues to rise, defying a 2021 consensus trade. And as the US dollar didn't get the memo, extending a rise versus major rivals as the first quarter comes to a close and defying widely held expectations for a decreasing value of the dollar. However, Peter Zeihan, who I follow, predicted this, and I'm very glad he did. But did you have a thought on this, Karam, about the?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, US historically has been actually kind of sort of accusing, Beijing of the manipulation of the currencies and everything, primarily due to because it just like shakes up the whole world economy. Because if major currency actually appreciates or depreciate, it just like shakes up the markets, it shakes up the overall business itself. So now this is not like intent on the US side, but this is just oil is so much because the whole transaction depends on the actual oil thing, and dollar is so much linked with it. It's just anything happens in the oil market actually affects the dollar bit. So yeah, that bound to
So
happen. Yeah.
other big interesting headlines. Evan, you have this one about gig workers. This is huge.
Yeah, that was the gig workers are organizing, and I think it's happening everywhere, but in particular now in Massachusetts,
Mm-hmm.
they essentially want to unionize, and I'm not sure I can blame them. I mean, the gig workers are getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed to the point where,
Mm-hmm.
they want to kind of fight back. So I think the headline was gig workers are prepping for $100 million battle against Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash, and a coalition of gig workers and labor rights advocates are anticipating uh, using the California Prop 22 fight as a model here in Massachusetts, where I am,
Yep.
but also in other states. So, the gig
Yeah.
economy is kind of blowing
I
up
just
with the
tweeted out your
pandemic
article
in
to
many
our Twitter
ways.
account at TNATW. You can see the letters above my head on my photo. And it's an interesting article. And one of the quotes is, "We know the way to beat these big tech companies with their endless money is to organize early and to make sure that we're driving an affirmative agenda on this and not allowing the companies to set the terms of the debate." And so that's why we're organizing now, even though they haven't even filed their language. Okay. I don't think they're going to win. I think the apps are going to win, although we'll see. Because the apps can have dynamic pricing. And if they continue to increase the price of the amount that drivers will get, your greed will overtake the short-term greed of the short-term greed will overtake the long-term greed, meaning if they just start paying, double in the app at certain times when they need more drivers. It's a dynamic marketplace, and the app can change the amount that the drivers make in real time. And they can pay, if it's a marketplace, if they need more drivers, they increase the price. It's as simple as that. And if there's not enough drivers, they'll keep increasing the price. And the drivers can play a game where they're like, hey, okay, all of us simultaneously don't accept any rides, and the price will get really high. They've done that. That they've been playing that game for a long time, and the apps already know how to circumvent that. So I don't see how they're going to overcome this, because
The ironic thing is we're in a labor shortage for frontline workers and restaurant workers because
right.
people aren't willing to take these crappy wages anymore when there are, increasingly better options or,
Yeah.
Subsidies,
There was
But Ivan,
employment, things like that. So it's
a
that
historical
is going
story.
to end, by the way, by end of this month because of all these handouts. That's what's creating the problem. And then, the moment it ends, some states is ending this month, some states is going to be ending in August. So I think by end of the year, we'll have this
We'll
shortage
see.
take care of itself.
But I don't think it's only financial. I mean, service workers have never or have long been treated with disrespect. And I think the pandemic has only exacerbated it in terms of, just some of the abuse that people have taken. And so, I mean, I think that people are
Could
reaching
be.
their limits in many cases.
Lakeisha, one household is getting up to $3,000 a month while sitting at home. Why would they work? It's just
No, I'm not
they're getting
saying that
so
the
yeah.
financial is not a consideration, but I'm also saying that I mean, people who work in the service industry are often abused by customers, and I think that, we've seen anomalies, hopefully. I mean, hopefully they're only anomalies, but these extreme cases where people are just trying to earn their daily wage and they have to be bouncers and enforcers and servers
So,
simultaneously. I mean,
There is
it's tough.
so Lakeisha, I have a direct story about this. I talked to the bellhop in Vegas as we were leaving. I said, how have the customers been? I'm like 70-30. He's like, no, it's like 55-45. And I said, why is that? And he says, there's a lot of people coming out here that aren't working, taking the stimulus and literally trying to live like a king in Vegas, and they don't treat us well.
Mm.
So what's unique is you would think the people that are working in service would have respect for other people that are in service, but it's in some cases not the case. So you are seeing that frontline service people are just getting treated like rag dolls, regardless of who the clientele is.
So there's a
Yeah, I could
historical
believe it.
story that we have to realize is a historical story, right? That we shouldn't repeat again. Back in World War II, when black soldiers went off to war, they actually got a payment, right? And so the wives actually would stay home because of that extra pay that the husbands were getting. They would stay home and look after their own families. Now, so the white families were getting angry at this, right? And so these are people who were privileged and they actually had servants and so forth, right? So they were privileged, and what they did was they pushed through a law. I'll find out which state it was. They pushed through a law that actually forced the wives to go back to work. They actually forced them. These are minimum wage, like really hardworking people. They forced them to leave their families and go to work. So not only did these families have to find childcare on their meager wages to look after their own kids, now they had to go and were forced to go and look after someone else's kids. So this can happen too in the current day world. in a different way. I don't know how it'll be, but we have to be conscious of that. This has been a long-standing issue between the sort of the
Okay.
haves and the have-nots
So
too.
a few
Thanks.
other, well, more than a few interesting headlines at the moment. Um, that I'm retweeting. As I share these, I'm tweeting them out simultaneously. So there's one, thank you to William for this one, about a company called Kernel. And Kernel Company allows people to play games with their brain without any controller at all. And it's not based on your eye movements, it's based on your brain. So you can play Pong and some esports, exciting potential for AIM Labs, 16 million players to level up with at scale neuro quantification. So I just sent out the link to this so you can do your own research on it. And it shows the device that you put on your head. And I've seen people playing with these where two people playing together with a little miniature soccer ball in between them, and they face each other, and they have two little goals on the ground and a little soccer ball in the middle, and both players can move the ball with their brain by thinking about it and using kind of their neuro muscles, kind of invisibly move the ball up and down the field and try and score on each other's goals. And it's an interesting development. Other similar interesting developments at the moment. Australian study warns that individuals who produced COVID antibodies with the original COVID strains, people who got the original COVID and then developed the antibodies naturally as getting COVID, that those antibodies are not effective against the new emerging variants like Delta Plus and whatever the other hyper new ones are that are coming out now. And that's coming out. That's the news from Thailand. So that, and they're calling it breaking news, and that's certainly concerning because that means you could get COVID all over again. Good times, fun times.
Remember what I was saying? That we got
And
it
then
twice in 2 weeks.
here's one that Heyman, you had one about a what's called Oso VR. A company just raised 27 million to turn surgery into a video game, a VR game. Yeah.
Yeah, no, JT's the one who actually pointed me towards it. So thanks, JT. It's basically an educational company, right? Because especially during this pandemic, education, especially in the surgical specialties, was very hard because surgeries were all postponed and there was no access to equipment. So OSOVR has already been working on this kind of surgical simulation. And with this pandemic, they've got quite a lot of interest from the manufacturers of orthopedic products and so forth. So Johnson and Johnson and all the other ones. So it's actually a growing ed tech
And
space in the
Evan, on the medtech front, you
tech
had an
area.
article about Amazon COVID test.
Yeah, I've just ordered one. Amazon has on their site now basically a self-service test. So you can order the test, get it at home, take it, I think drop it off at a lab and get results without ever going into the doctor or hospital. So I've ordered one
$39.99.
just to have in the cupboard.
And is that just one test, Evan, or is that just or
Yes.
is it like multiple that you can use? Because I saw it was like $40.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I'll let you know when I get it. I think it's one test. But yeah.
Curious what temperature it could be transported at, given the heat waves.
No, I think
No,
it's
no,
possible to have.
no. I don't think it's a lab test. It's basically we have this in UK. It's called the what is it, fast test
Oh, reagent.
testing.
Okay,
So
reagent test.
basically, what you do,
Yes.
you just take a swab behind your throat. So basically, I did that last week, and the beautiful thing about this is that you can actually manipulate the results. But it will allow, but
Lime
it will
juice.
allow, but it will allow you to get into Wembley Stadium, all of that stuff. So that's the problem here. You can literally manipulate. So you get the result in 10 minutes. You can actually, and there's a, I don't know if you guys have seen, there's a famous video going on TikTok to how to make it a positive test, and there's a lot of kids at school.
Kids.
They've been using this to make the whole school shut down in the UK. So basically they can
So
just show them.
Karen, you're pretty good at getting the predictions right. You're pretty accurate on Bitcoin so far. Let me ask you something. 60,000 people in the Wembley Stadium yesterday, right?
Yep.
There are two tests. There are two things that they do in the UK, I think, right? One, they look at the vaccine, the digital validation that
Certificate.
you've had the vaccine, right? And then the other one is test, not both at the same time. So if you haven't had a vaccine, you do the test, right? So out of the 60,000, how many people do you think manipulated it and you don't know whether they're positive or negative? Do you think it's like 20%, 10%, 30%?
45 to 50%. At least it's almost 50-50. Because I'll tell you why. I did that same thing.
Wow.
I went to a cricket match the other day, and I wasn't vaccinated. I got this quick test. Okay, I'm negative. I had no reason to manipulate it, but I do know a lot of people. They would do so because the thing is, these tickets. I mean, look, the thing is, guys, I think the feeling I'm getting is this. My children, they go to private school, 3 schools, and the emails that I get every single day is that how the infection among children are going crazy, and they're stopping evening classes and this and that. And that's something you don't see in the mainstream. That's the first thing. Second thing is that there is a loophole that people are getting away. You can actually get these kind of quick tests, and it gives you access to a place like Wembley. Imagine 60,000, and the new health secretary come in. The first statement he says is that we're going to open up in July, but we might see 100,000 cases every day. After that. So I think it's getting to a point that they're just giving up. So. So it's just like, again, like I said last time, let's have another woo-ha party for the next couple of months, and then let's just towards December, let's lock down again. That seems like the attitude here in the UK.
Yeah, just
So,
call it a day.
other hot headlines happening at the moment: the China's digital currency, with the digital yuan, which they call, they say it's in a trial that it's being rolled out, is now expanding to 10 million more eligible users. As China has made 10 million people eligible to participate in its expanding digital yuan trial as it continues to lead global central banks in developing a virtual currency. Indeed, it is, and they are doing what China does. They are doing China speed with their Chinese digital currency. And CNN wants you to know, and boy, is this breaking news, China is cracking down on data. That's big. That's bad news for some of China's big tech companies. And CNN, you're only about a month late to that headline. Well done. Um, they're only covering that now. It's kind of blowing my mind. Fitbit, yeah,
And Tyler, one of the things that you didn't cover during the oil price that we were talking about, and something I don't know, maybe I missed the session, is that
that's
U.S. has
right.
left Afghanistan. All right, there is a lot of shit going on in that region. And another thing that you need to, that's one thing I've seen in the last 20 years, working in the banking industry, is that every single time you see this, when the oil price is going towards $100, is that so there is this thing which is a lot of the banks research. So every $10 rise in the oil price adds about 0.3% to the GDP. So that's that's first thing. So it is actually overall it's very good in the kind of the environment that we are in. It does add about 0.3% to the GDP every $10 of oil rise. It's been the case. And the second thing is that what is the biggest industry that's got
Hmm.
really fucked up during this crisis was the airline industry, right? And a lot of these guys, what they do, they hedge their oils. So when the oil price were about 30, 40, $50, they're already hedged for the entire probably 2-3 years, right? So they're kind of sitting on. So you're literally buying at 30, getting delivered at 30, but the current price is at 100, or let's say whatever that is. So there is a massive kind of a windfall. It's pretty much like someone is giving you pocket cash windfall, pretty much a free windfall through that kind of the oil price, right? So there's a lot of that manipulation. So look, OPEC, like I said, like Bitcoin, crypto space, it's a cartel. And there is a lot of shit goes on every 5-10 years. You see the similar behavior, and also Saudi Arabia, they had this 2030 vision, and they've been deficit, they've been short, and also the Khashoggi incident didn't help them. So basically they do need this oil price to be high in order to kind of
Hmm.
balance the book as
Okay.
well. So there's a lot of that
So
stuff goes on behind the
the
scene.
Evan, you had one about Fitbit, right?
Yeah, which Fitbit is, of
That's right.
course, Google now, right? If I recall. But basically, they're looking to have a ring, much like my Aura ring, which I love and wear every day. So it looks like they're copying the form factor, and will have things like blood pressure and other
Yeah.
functionality to try to one up
Yes.
Aura. So the
More
battle
data,
for your
but
finger
Google.
is
So
in play.
why is Google making a ring? It's a trick question. that sweet, sweet, they can't help it. They cannot help themselves. They need to get your juicy, sweet, sweet, juicy, juicy data off of your finger. And in this case, they want to know your blood pressure. And what's the other one? The SpO2, your oxygen. And
That's
right.
a great one for
But you know what
COVID.
else? Clearly, this
COVID
means that
monitoring.
Aura was made an offer to acquire Aura, and they refused. But it's Fitbit, which is part of Google. But yeah, I think Fitbit just saw how much traction Aura is getting and decided they need to get into that space. And Aura's, yeah, yeah.
And they may still get aura, right? It's the classic technique. You start your action, and then that's how we ended up with buying a whole chain in Canada. We started opening up our stores there when they refused the offer, and we opened up to about 15 stores. And eventually they just
But
sold to us, called Future Shop. Any Canadian will know
this
that.
blood pressure
But yeah, same technique.
monitoring, and if they get your heart rate, that's where it gets really interesting. But they because it allows them to add another layer of data to what you're watching in real time. So they know at precisely 4:17 p.m. you were looking at this ad, and now they know your heart rate at that exact moment as well, and your eye tracking, and that could be an additional signal, a very valuable signal to a biological response signal layer that they can add to that data. So it starts to get really interesting. And JT, you had one.
Yeah, it's a new app. Well, it's not a new application, but it's coming to the Oculus store, so you can use it in your VR headset. It's essentially an application that allows you to brainstorm in 3D. So you have spatially around you these mind maps that you're able to connect ideas and really take your project to the next level. But I think that there's another important article that I shared
Yeah,
regarding
but let's talk
Apple's
about
new
Noda for a
UI
second. It
interface,
says
if you want
Noda
me to get
brings
into that.
mind mapping to Oculus Quest. 3D mind maps. So you can, that's kind of cool. And I just retweeted this so people can see it. So essentially, like people do these on paper all the time, right? Or they use apps that allow them to organize their thoughts two-dimensionally with like kind of thought bubbles that they then connect via strings, right? And it's kind of like in every police detective's office where they have the photos of this and newspaper articles over here, and they draw lines between them, and they're trying to figure out, how all these things are connected. And in VR, you can do that in 3 dimensions, where that's you add a whole extra Z factor to the equation that gets very interesting. But Noda brings mind mapping to Oculus. Virtual brainstorming includes single and multiplayer modes, speech to text, and different spatial environments. It looks super cool. You kind of got to see it to understand it. But I just retweeted it. And what was the other one, JT?
The
Tyler,
other one
on
was regarding. I'm sorry, go ahead.
so just going to say, Tyler, on that note about the 3D mind mapping, it's Ben here. I'm pretty confident that this is going to revolutionize coding as well. I've been waiting for Epic or Unreal, I think are the most likely people to do it, to release a version of their visual scripting, but in 3 dimensions, because most of the limitations of visual scripting, coding without actually writing words, but using blocks and lines come from the fact you're constrained to a 2D page. So I think it's a pretty exciting
That's a
space,
great
not just
point.
for mind mapping,
That's
but
a
I'm really
really great
hoping that it's
point
going to revolutionize
because,
coding at some point.
yeah, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, and the reason is that in 2D, what you do is you've got the confusing thing is you've got these lines that represent data flowing around, but you also have other lines that represent execution flow and where one step leads to the next. If you could separate those out in 3D, it could be
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
And
There's a lot of
that
other
brings up
things
an
you could do when you
interesting
think about
point
it too.
of,
So
I
just a thought.
forget what Miller Puckett calls Max in terms of a visual, I think he just calls it visual programming language, where it's essentially, if you know any programming language, or let's use Java, where you have variables and methods, as they're called, and then in 3D space, they're like blocks, and it's like this box does one method, which is essentially an action, which is like it counts up. Yeah, it goes +1 plus, it counts
It's like
from
Minecraft.
1 to infinity. and then you can use that to trigger things. And then you draw the lines from the box that's counting to these other boxes that whenever it gets a 5, it does some particular action, and it's constantly triggering different actions. And you can string all of these boxes together. Next thing you know, you got a drum machine and you can create all kinds of stuff.
So
Yeah,
it's sort of a
this is
low code
they call
development, the
it
hottest
visual
thing in tech
programming.
right
And visual programming, I learned it in 2D, but Ben is exactly right. It gets a little confusing in 2D, this virtual visual.
Yeah, what looks
Yeah.
in 2D could end up
Okay,
looking
so
like
JT, what
poetry in
was the other
3D.
one
So
that you were talking about?
yeah, pretty cool.
So the other one is Apple invents a user interface for a mixed reality headset that uses floating interactive orbs. So this UI essentially uses interactive bubbles or orbs to access data items. So you're able to like interact with it by moving it, regrouping, and selecting and playing these data items. Specifically for music apps, what they want to use it for. But Apple says that you can take that same UI concept and expand it to other applications for
Yeah,
documents and
I'm
whatever other apps they want to invent within
yeah,
their VR
it's
headset.
super
But
cool. You have
if
to
you look
see
at the
the
image, it
image
looks
and
pretty
then
cool.
understand that somebody should render this image, and because when you do patent drawings, it's always done with stick figures. But if somebody were to actually like, some real design chops, like take this idea and do it really beautifully, it would blow people's minds, because the idea is you're in VR or AR, and now you've got these bubbles floating around, and inside of these bubbles, in this example, imagine, and this is truly profound, because you have to imagine, we had computers and there was apps on computers, and then we had phones, and you had to reimagine what a dating app or a video game looks like on a phone compared to on a computer. And it's fundamentally different. Tinder is totally different on a phone than whatever worked on your laptop before smartphones came along, right? Match.com. And now we have to reimagine what a dating app will look like, or even a music app like Apple Music or Spotify will look like in VR. And this interface is truly mind blowing, where it shows 3-dimensional bubbles floating in front of you. And in this case, each bubble is an artist that you like, that you follow. So you've got a Metallica bubble with the band smiling at you, floating like they're in an actual goddamn bubble floating in your room. And if you want to open that, you can pop it with your finger, and that's how you get into that page, their profile page. And then maybe you want to go over to, the Stevie Wonder bubble, where there's Stevie floating around in a bubble in your living room, smiling at you, maybe performing. And again, you can click on that bubble and pop it and go into that bubble with them. But you've got multiple bubbles floating around you, and you can pinch and zoom on them, even according to this diagram. And that is a wild interface idea. And of course, they're right. It would go much more beyond music apps, as this case, where you could see all of your friends floating in bubbles in front of you, and you could click on them to pop their bubbles and start a call with them or whatever. Wild interface idea. The idea of you're using bubbles like that are floating in front of you in a hyper realistic way. That's really cool. Thank you for that, JT. And Evan, you're on a roll. Let's do this. This is going to turn into an interesting one. Magic mushrooms.
I love your mushroom stories, Tyler. So I was just trying to gaslight you here into talking more about doing mushrooms. But basically, it looks like, at least in mice, consuming these magic mushrooms creates all kinds of new neuron connections in the brain, which helps fight
Yes,
depression and other
just
mental
I
illnesses.
just I
So
just
fascinating study in mice. But I think we need more Tyler studies, though. You need to
right.
volunteer for
There's a
some
lot of that
clinical
happening
trials,
now, and a
Tyler.
lot of
Maybe we could
startups, by the
get
way.
some
It's a hot
results.
space, and if you're doing a startup that involves psychedelics, you're likely to get funded, because there's a lot of people who've done psychedelics that are now angel investors that want to support it. So
I really would like to
I
try
can I can
psychedelics, but
I can try
you
to
can't
bring it.
do it.
Sorry,
I can try to bring an expert on, Tyler, from the medtech space. I know a CEO of a psychedelic medical startup.
Yeah.
An expert on
Just
Tyler.
one
I didn't
dose
even know
of
that was a
magic.
field.
That's my mom, and I'll bring her in here, and she's a real wealth of information on all things Tyler. It blows my mind when I sit down and talk with her how much she absorbed everything about me from. She has like a photographic memory of everything I ever did. It's really remarkable. Anyway, the headline that Evan shared that I just retweeted is just one dose of magic mushroom regrows lost brain connections in mice. And the implication there is that it would do the same in humans, which I think is a safe assumption, perhaps, because that's the type of response people have after doing it, is that they feel like the left and right parts of their brain are somehow more connected during this experience. And honestly, I hate to let everybody down. I've only done magic mushrooms once in my life, and I shared with you precisely what happened. And there isn't too much more to add to it than that, other than it, as I said last time, it did drive me to investigate it for many, many, many years. The profoundness of the experience left me utterly baffled and puzzled. And in fact, my deep dive, my multi-year deep dive into it, left me even more impressed than before. And you can't do that deep dive without coming across the McKenna brothers, Terrence McKenna and Dennis McKenna. And Terrence himself is just a true mystery of the world in the most beautiful way possible. And but
Didn't Steve Jobs talk famously about taking psychedelics and the powerful impact
and he
it
specifically
had on his thinking and creativity?
There and I sorry. Oh, NIH just finished a second study last year on what is it called, psilocybin or something, whatever the
Psilocybin.
chemical. Psilocybin. Thank you very much. And its effect on dementia and early onset Alzheimer's, and the results are extremely promising. The interest of people in the blockchain and crypto community in this particular area is very, very high. So if there is a way to connect this, not like, straining credulity, but actually if you can connect it to something with either crypto and payment methods, which is possible, or blockchain, there's going to be a huge amount of funding in there for it.
And then the Terrence, made a life out of being an author and a lecturer all around the psychedelic experience, and went into the origins of where they were discovered, which are usually in the Amazon or down in Mexico, and where the psilocybin mushroom ceremony was happening down in Mexico, and then the ayahuasca was in the Amazon, and he tried to seek out the actual origins of and meet these tribes and really get their take on it. And now this has become quite huge, this kind of psychedelic tourism of people going to the Amazon to meet with shamans and do ayahuasca ceremonies. It's absolutely massive in Silicon Valley to do that. And that's now why we're starting to see psychedelic startups happening, because it's such a hot area. And yeah, I mean, the reality is people who do psychedelics now generally, almost overwhelmingly, have wildly positive experiences and really don't have negative experiences. And the profoundly positive experiences that people are having are life-changing. And in fact, when people take surveys, more than the majority of them say it's the most profound thing that's ever happened in their life. So what is that worth? I mean, and of course, no, go ahead, Ben.
I have a quick, sorry, Tyler, didn't mean to interrupt, mate.
Yeah.
I just have a quick comment on just a slightly different angle from it. If you're young and you're listening and you have aspirations to go, for instance, into the Air Force or something, just be aware, do this after your Air Force days, not before. Because certainly in our country, when I was in the Air Force, any having taken psychedelics at any point in your life precludes you completely in case of a later flashback. And they told you, whether it's true or not, that they could test for that as well. So just an FYI, if you're super young, you want to be a pilot, just consider playing with that after that. That's all I'd say.
And if you want to go into a security agency, so think the three-letter agencies, right? Alphabet soup, FBI, CIA, DHS. At least wait 7 years before you want to fill out an application because you're not likely to get a security clearance.
Oh, and for God's sake, don't lie about it. I know 2 people who lost their jobs because they lied, not necessarily because of what they did. So don't lie on any of your
Do
job
not. Yes,
applications.
Alexandra, sorry. You are 100% right. Sometimes you don't know what they'll look past, but do not
So
fucking lie
there's,
on these things, people.
it was Oregon who was the first to legalize psilocybin recently. And much like marijuana, it's expected to continue to kind of shift, state to state in the next few years. So it'll be interesting to see. Ranjit shared an article that I'm just retweeting out now about Pop Shop Live raising $20 million at $100 million valuation for its live stream shopping platform for hipsters. Legacy TV series like HSN and QVC may have put live shopping shows on the map for consumers, but live stream commerce got a completely new boost. And there's a really interesting photo of a young lady with her little live streaming setup. She's Asian, perhaps not coincidentally. They probably took it from somewhere in Asia where this has already been happening for quite a while and is incredibly huge, as you know. And then China just gave this is an actual headline from CNN. And so CNN actually really pushing the boundaries here. This is an actual headline from CNN. China just gave a big FU to America. That's the headline from CNN. And the article says that Kyle Bass, the hedge fund manager and outspoken critic of Beijing, says the timing of China's crackdown on ride-hailing app Didi is no coincidence. The Chinese believe deeply in the Chinese believe deeply in symbolism and numerology, Bass told CNN Business. Banning an IPO that just went public in the U.S. with U.S. investor money on our Independence Day was a big FU to the United States. I assume Kyle Bass is not following tech news around the world for all the other reasons that China was cracking down on Didi that we've uncovered, but I like his idea that it was intentionally on July 4th. Didi shares crashed 20% on Tuesday after Chinese regulators announced on July 4th that they were banning the platform from app stores in the country because it poses cybersecurity risks and broken laws, etc. And then here's the quote again. They knew this was going public. They knew they were going to ban it from the app stores and shut it down, said Bass, the founder and chief investment officer of Heyman Capital. Nothing happens without the behest and pleasure of Chinese President Xi Jinping. The fact that the crackdown by China wasn't announced until after Didi went public cost some American investors dearly. And it sounds like it cost this guy quite dearly based on his analysis of this. Didi is extremely reliant on its home market for revenue. The company's market value fell to $57 billion on Wednesday, down from nearly $70 billion from when it went public. However, unnamed sources told the Wall Street Journal that China's cybersecurity watchdog suggested to Didi to delay its IPO, which they did. We do know that. And so this guy, Kyle, attention, Kyle. Hello, Kyle. Earth to Kyle. You got your story all wrong, Kyle. This was not the CCP trying to pull one over on you and anyone else investing in this. They really didn't want this IPO to happen. And Didi jumped in the chopper against China's wishes and flew over to New York and did this IPO against her wishes. And on the day of the 100th anniversary of the CCP is the real coincidence. And then as soon as the birthday party ended, they came over and shut that shit down, which just happened to be on July 4th. But it didn't have nothing to do with you putting a bunch of money in it and trying to cost you a bunch of money. And it's got a lot more going on behind the scenes. But I like his the cut of his jib, and let's ask David tomorrow. So, by the way, he's not alone in wondering this. Let's be fair. That we even had some people DMing asking, is this potentially directly aimed at America to try and hurt American investors? That they let this go through, knowing they were going to shut it down, costing a bunch of Americans a bunch of money. You know what? You might not be totally wrong, Kyle. Time will tell, but it seems like there's more to it than that. So he's now saying send the money back to investors. Bass, who successfully bet on the collapse of the U.S. housing market prior to the Great Recession, has become a vocal opponent of the Chinese Communist Party. In the interview, he called on the U.S. financial regulators to do more to protect American investors from the whims of Chinese regulators. Specifically, Bass urged the SEC to allow investors who bought Didi shares to rescind the transaction and recover their money, essentially undoing their trade. He pointed to, and there's no way in hell that's going to happen.
They are not going to do
He
that.
pointed to federal securities laws that allow for rescission if buyers of shares did not know about a misstatement or omission at the time of the purchase. It's not clear if that would apply in this case. Send the money back to investors, Bass said. It was clearly sold under false pretenses, therefore fraudulently. Clearly, he lost a bunch of money, which is strange because he doesn't like the CCP. So why did he invest in a Chinese startup if he's such an outspoken critic of China? Bass criticized the SEC more broadly for allowing Chinese companies to list shares on the U.S. exchanges, even though those firms don't need to submit to U.S. auditing standards. It's crazy, he said. The SEC's job is to protect investors. The SEC did not respond to requests for comment. But Bass has one other couple of quotes here where he says, what?
Tyler, sound clip you need in your library when you talk about them getting to the chopper. It just reminds me of Arnie in Predator when he makes that famous quote. Yes. You got to stick there every time you talk about. Yeah, this bit.
Get to the chopper. Senator Marco Rubio told the Financial Times that it was reckless and irresponsible for Didi to be allowed to sell shares. Even if the stock rebounds, American investors still have no insight into the company's financial strength because the Chinese Communist Party blocks U.S. regulators from reviewing the books. Now, that's a great point. Rubio told the UK newspaper. That puts the investments of American retirees at risk and funnels desperately needed U.S. dollars into Beijing. Bass slammed brokers, fund managers, and institutional investors for buying U.S.-listed Chinese IPOs despite concerns about the sanctity of their financial records. You can't possibly know if the numbers they are giving you are true. If you lose money, you should lose your job, said Bass. So maybe he didn't invest.
But wait. So for the financials though, so typically on an IPO, they don't actually, like, the SEC is not auditing books. They get the financial statements, which there would have to be done in HK GAAP. That is pretty much compliant in many ways with US GAAP. And then there's usually an accounting firm that has to be, in order to do it, it has to be PCAOB approved, so the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board approved. So some large accounting agency that is registered with the SEC went through it and made sure that all of the numbers comported with GAAP and were properly reflected the numbers that were properly like they're put in the right categories, right? That's what they do. But it's not up to the SEC to review an audit, right? That's what the auditing firm does. So there's nobody in the US who would have said, oh, you have to look at these books and stuff. It's not the same as a private offering where you have to have access to books. But for a public offering, they provide audited financials. If there's a problem with the financials, then you take that up with the accounting firm, the firm that did the audit. You don't take that up with the SEC, and you don't take it up. I mean, it's not even the company. It's really the auditing firm that's on the hook for that. So I'm not really sure how he's trying to blame the U.S. for anything, or the SEC or some government agency. There's no government agency role in any of that.
Quote here is, you can't possibly know the numbers, right? Many investors don't want to miss out on the potential of a monster gains. which is called FOMO, fear of missing out. FOMO will get the most gullible people, Bass said, and maybe they should lose their money. If you want to light your money on fire, then go for it, he said. So I guess he didn't invest in Didi after all, but he's very upset that people lost money in Didi. But he thinks it was a big old scheme, and I would love to ask David that when we see him next time. Anyone else of the mind that this was actually an elaborate scheme to cost American investors, or do we think it was a scheme for Didi's
No,
investors to get
no,
their money out of Didi?
no. Yes, that was in my view, right? And of course,
Yep,
David will come and help us with that. But
that's what
there's a
I'm
bigger
thinking.
game than the game that guy is alluding to in that article.
Yes,
Yeah, much
yes.
much bigger game. This is all small fry, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle. Wouldn't it be against China's best interest to just blatantly do a one-off defrauding of U.S.
Yes,
investors? They
yes,
could.
pointless.
Okay.
It's like showing your cards on something it's a small part of the game. This is, a massive game of Go, and I've been using that as an analogy for rightly or wrongly. But and in that game, what David explained this morning was probably the closest we've got to people in the US at least understanding, or other places understanding how on this platform, that is, on how, the complexity of the vested interests in China and all the different interests and how it played out. And as it plays out now, it's kind of a win for the Chinese government, a win for all the vested interests that needed a payoff at some point, and then the money filtering back. And I'm saying this, not David. And the money filtering back to the places where everyone got what they needed to, and some alignment as we get into the next Congress being formed by the leadership, and all that stuff happening, which is all very, very opaque, except for, we get a little portal into it with David. But so that's the bigger game, and some of this is collateral damage and other things. At least that's my view. But yeah,
But Cal, the biggest losers here are the American middle class, right? The ones whose pension funds have
I can't
invested in
make
this.
that connection. It's even bigger than that. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
no.
because
So
anybody can trade the shares in US, not just American.
No, but I mean, these are big funds, right, that trade on behalf of the people.
can I?
Yeah.
So yeah, can I just respond to you, Heyman, on that? So if I elevate or ladder up the issue, there's a bigger game of Go going on, and the U.S. is also playing that game. All right, so I can't make that causality. That's kind of like a Guardian headline,
Like that.
Yeah, my question is, what happens to all the other China? I mean, how does this impact fundraising for all other Chinese
Tremendous
companies and
negative
that kind of
impact for
thing? Isn't that,
Chinese companies,
Well,
going beyond Didi?
which again is why
so
they
yeah,
wouldn't do it.
so,
Right.
so
So
I
aren't they
think this
hurting
is
themselves?
actually, I think this is the third company, the third major one this year that they've done this. You can't go to the US. So what China's trying to do is force everyone to the HK exchange. And there is a vested interest clearly in the US saying, no, we don't want those companies only in the HK exchange. We want you guys here, at NASDAQ or NYSE. That's where, because that's better for the US economy. Battling exchanges, though, that's not even new. And that's, although sort of to some extent, most exchanges are related at this point because they all, they're conglomerates and there are common owners to so many of them that it seems almost incestuous to battle over these exchanges. But from what I've read, so the China's, and this is probably just their PR thing, but China's interests are making sure that all that capital doesn't leave the country, and making sure that that the big data or big tech companies are all contained, which is what we saw in that hearing, like what was it 2 weeks ago about crypto, which is let's follow China, which I cannot believe someone actually said, like an actual congressman actually said that. But they said, yeah, let's follow China because they're keeping all of their tech in check. And they are to some extent, like, more than we are. But that's part of what they want, is to maintain all that control. I do think it'd be interesting if Clubhouse and other apps like this, as they go public, so many of them are based on tech that is Chinese, right? The Agora technology is Chinese. I would have thought Agora going public at some point was a very big option. It might not be anymore.
On that point, Kieran and Ken and several others sent in this article about, and feel free to comment if either of you are on stage, that about from the Wall Street Journal saying China's cyber watchdog, the cyber regulator, has become the new securities regulator, powerful agency that Xi Jinping set up to police the internet, will take a lead role in regulating Chinese companies and their overseas listings. If Kieran or Ken want to comment on an article they both sent. Kieran, you there?
Tyler, yes, but I think I
Okay.
wanted to touch up on the last point. I think it will probably marry into this point, which is, look, I came from Sri Lanka. It's Sri Lanka is a very dictatorship, country. I mean, when I say dictator, it's a democracy, it's an ex-British colony. But the way it's run is a lot of it is a very family politics, right? The way I see is, I think a lot of the things that West is missing out when you look to China and all of these headlines is, if you look at last 500 years in China, they rarely gone to war outside of their borders. It's always been internal, right? Internals and coups and fighting against each other. That's what's mostly been the case, right? So the way I see this is that when you look at what people are missing in this puzzle is this Z a lot of this is that is kind of telling the West it's protecting the next thing. It's mostly to do with this particular thing about this Didi. If you are somewhere in a village in a rural area in China hearing this headline, you know what he's saying? China 1, America 0. We just fucked you up. That's just the way the emotions that you get drilled down. That's exactly the way in Sri Lanka, if you're in a rural south, when Sinhalese, the leadership, when they do something like this, that's how they do it. And they just manipulate. They keep it, they keep them in this kind of this mindset, the US is against us. They're going to fuck us up. We got to protect our interest. And this is, and look at like the other headline today. Amazon, so Alibaba is going to be delivering, competing with Amazon to deliver stuff from China to the rest of the world. So how is China's losing anything out? Right? They already strategically placed everything in a place that you can't take anything away from them. But what they're doing is they are making sure that nobody can take any shit away from them, right? So that in next 100 years, they don't have to go through this kind of a war, because they hate fighting, right? They know that they need to take over Taiwan. They cleverly waited for 1990. People forget, right? So one of the things, Tyler, I'll be 30 seconds. People forget that 99 years ago, 110 years ago, British used the Hong Kong
Right.
as a narcotic, as an opium hub, right? China, they said, okay, fine, we want this shit back. And you know what the British says? No, we will just give you 99 years. And the British said, haha, that's long enough. You're never going to have it back. But 99 fucking years went by. And what did China say? They waited for 99 years. Thank you very much. Fuck off. Right? I think this is the way the Chinese think about it. Very long term, very strategic. All of this shit, we'll look back in 100 years down the line. We'll think, you know what? How did China manage to keep everything the way it is? And this is what it is. This is just the beginning of a first chapter into the next 100 years, Tyler. This is something that we're getting caught. We're getting very caught up in this American mindset of
Yeah.
shit. The whole world need to be this globalization. Everyone need to share shit. China operates in their own book, and they have a 100-year vision. And
Just really quickly, I agree. China is a long-term thinker. You're 100% right there, Kieran. You're also 100% wrong saying that China avoids war. Not going to read out the whole list, but I would say the people of Tibet, people of Xinjiang province would beg to differ. South Korea in the Korean War,
no,
Vietnam in the
so let's think
Vietnam
about Tibet.
War.
Look, no,
So,
let's talk about the
but
Tibet for a
hold on. I didn't. All that I'm trying to say is I can go down the list, and this is just in the last century, not the
So a lot of
last
the
500 years. There are
lot of the
ample
wars. No,
examples of the
Justin,
Chinese
let me just
government
Justin, let
going
me add to
through forms of war
Justin,
outside
let
of
me
their
add
own
to that.
borders.
You added Vietnam and you added Tibet.
Ladies
Both
and
of those
gentlemen,
wars, China, both of those wars, China didn't,
let's get ready
want
to
to do that war,
rumble!
right? A lot of people forget Tibet actually, won the Chinese war, right? Vietnam they lost. So Chinese hate going into war, right? That's the history. Most of the wars, Chinese fought is always internally, and it's been brutal. There are times that they kill 500 million. It's internal wars. That's what he's trying to make sure that people like Jack Ma, people like, Mayoshi Son, none of these people get into a stage where that they can come into, start meddling in internal affairs. So those two particular war that you mentioned, Justin, is that it's not China led. It was imposed upon them, and they lost, and they hate that. They never won a war which they waged outside of China border. They never won any war that they waged outside of China's
Xinjiang
border.
province, dude. That was not in China's border. They literally took over the province, and that's why we have a current genocide. And I could give you plenty of examples, but you just used a declarative. I just completely
but
disprove that.
you have to
So
look at the
that's
historical borders, right? Their
I
argument
really
is
think
historical borders. Their
exactly.
arguing is that historical borders, just like if you were to take the same argument for Israel or same argument for anywhere else in the world, right? They'll argue that this was historically our border, and
So
we have the right to
exactly.
claim our lands back, right? And so that's the
So
argument. They're not going outside their territorial boundaries of their historical land, right?
exactly my point. They never go outside of their territory, and also they are
So
very, very strict. And they say, "Don't come and
the
fuck
UK could
our
come
territory."
take
And
back
that's
the American colonies. That could be interesting. That would be interesting.
No,
exactly.
No, we
they
were.
can't. They were not historically theirs either, right? There
Well,
was
I
not
mean,
historically.
It was
I don't know that
historically.
they're afraid of war directly, but I do see that Kieran's point that what they do is they use proxies for anything outside of Chinese territory. What they do is fund other people who support things like if they like funding the North Vietnamese and funding North Korea, like they fund and they use proxy battles rather than do it themselves. I mean, I see that
just
point
like
too.
any
they
other
are
just like any
they are
other major
so
nation, right?
they're so
Just
clever at letting other people do their dirty work. They
yeah.
rarely go out of their own land. That's pretty much the thing. You need to think of, if you put that mindset into everything's going on right now in the tech space. Pretty much, this is a tech war, and
Okay.
they're playing the right cards, and the US is just way behind.
And one major article that came out in Canada, this is very important, guys. This is one came out. It came out they saying that the title was from National Post. It's embarrassing that China's tightening grip on the intellectual property landscape in Canada. Basically, the top 10 patent applications in Canada last year were foreign companies. The number one was by Chinese tech giants, and they actually take up 7 of the 10 spots in Canada of patents, and the others are basically American and one Saudi firm. So it tells you that they are playing the long game. I'm not sure how much they've put patents in the U.S. system. We know of the Canadian system now that they're actually doing this assessment by the Innovation Asset Collective that has done this assessment.
So in terms of the U.S. pattern, the facts on that, that's also again the Chinese led the way on the So I can get you the exact numbers. They overtaken the U.S. total patent in
Yeah.
the American. So I can get that list to you as well. So that is also correct. So the Chinese are taking over in
Heyman,
terms of
what
the U.S. patent.
you just had an article about birth control wearables.
Yeah, so it's basically it goes back to the fertility part, right? So this is a femtech, it's feminine technology, and it's basically sent by Pam. She actually messaged me about it. So it's basically FDA has approved this birth control app by Natural Cycles, and it assists women for tracking their ovulation cycles as a form of contraception. So that's interesting as a form of contraception. So it's basically timing when you're going to actually be able to
They're from
have
Sweden.
sex without any
They're from
problems.
they're friends from Stockholm, by the way. I nearly angel
It's also
invested
PD
in it. My
tracker.
friends did angel invest in it. Yeah.
Well,
oh, cool.
Where's the male wearable? I mean, is that just a chastity belt? Like, seriously?
Oh, guys, there's a new article that came out, right? That said that castration can reduce the aging of a man. So this is an article that came out of research that came out of New Zealand. It was an international research. It was an animal study though, but they're actually finding that if male rats get castrated early, they tend to live longer and actually be more, healthy. So this is something that
More feminine, right?
Sorry. Yes,
But are
exactly.
they
So they're
happy?
less more feminine.
testosterone,
Some of that.
probably. So
I'm off to the docks.
Evan, you just had a couple of really
Yes.
interesting ones that I'm tweeting out now about the 35 minerals that are critical to the U.S. national security, and they rank them in some kind of order. It's called the critical minerals list, and you really have to see this. I know Ben's gonna love this one. And it covers things. I'm trying to get a sense for which ones are more critical, the top or the bottom. How to read this list: least reliant on imports, completely reliant on imports. Okay, so we have lots of helium and alphinium, and we need lots of uranium, which need to be imported. We also import arsenic, and there's about 40 or 50 minerals on this list. And it's a really interesting list of about rare earth metals and lithium and what they are used for. It tells you what each of the minerals is used for. Like lithium is used in batteries, for example. And yeah, so it lists the critical minerals and then what we use them for, and then additional details about them, and then how much of them we have locally and how much of them we need to import. So very interesting list there. And then Evan, you had another interesting one that we covered briefly earlier today about Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak, the Woz as he's called, who along with Steve Jobs built this company called Apple. You may or may not have heard of it. It's Applebee's. They make products that you can use the interwebs on these Applebee products. They make an iPhone and a MacBook. Anyway, so Steve Wozniak is now in the news saying we regarding Apple's right to repair issue, which by the way, Joe Biden today is doing an executive order to make it a right for people to repair their goddamn iPhones, because Apple doesn't want you to have the right to repair your own iPhone. In fact, they don't even want you to say that it's your phone. So Steve Wozniak jumps in, all hot on the mic, saying we wouldn't have had an Apple had I not grown up in a very open technology world, cracking open other devices when he made the Apple One. It was largely inspired by other computers happening at the time, and it's all about being able to hack your stuff. And he's probably right. There would be no Apple if people didn't have a right to open their own stuff. So take that, Apple. And so next time you go to the Apple Genius Bar and you tell them you want to repair your own phone and they say you can't do that, you can tell them, you know what Steve Wozniak said? Let me read it to you. There would be no Apple if Steve Wozniak had not grown up in a very open technology world. And that's a quote. And then you storm right out and try and fix your phone. Good luck doing that, by the way. And
And you have a broken phone for a month, right?
but
That's what you have.
Heyman, you just had one about robots in China. Go ahead. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead,
robots
Jason.
offset
Oh, no,
China's population decrease? China's workforce is shrinking at an accelerating rate, paving the way for robots to revolutionize labor, is the headline from the Globe and Mail. You can read it yourself. And they've got robots cleaning everywhere. It's basically like industrial-sized Zumbas, which are roaming all around shopping malls, cleaning everything. And it shows a human cleaning stuff right next to them. And you can figure out which one cleans better and works longer and complains less and all that, and needs less health insurance. But Japan and China are really getting into the robot game in a very, very big way, and they are usually ahead of the curve. And we're going to need a whole lot of robots right now. We need autonomous vehicles now. I mean, but at the same time, what's that going to do for all the people sitting at home waiting for the prices to go up? They're already not going to work because they already feel like they're not being paid enough. What happens when the cars drive themselves? Silence from the crowd. Here, think about it for a second. Let's
I've never
just sit
been a
and
huge fan of
contemplate
UBI, but it's starting to
what's going
make
to
sense
happen
now.
when all of these Uber drivers
you just have your new music
are not
now.
going
It's
back
good.
to work because they feel like they're not getting paid enough, and then they find out, hey, don't bother coming back to the work. The car's driving itself now. What are they going to do next?
It's gonna be pitchforks for us that have jobs, guys. I'm totally serious.
They're going to be a gardener and plant their own food.
But they won't know how to plant food. They just
go
know
on YouTube, Cheryl says.
go
There you go,
YouTube.
Heyman. Checkmate. Go on YouTube. YouTube University.
Checkmate.
I can't afford
No,
internet.
but in all seriousness, this goes to what I think Amaya was talking about, and I think we've gone through it a couple weeks ago. Is like the adult education market, ed tech market, is going to be huge. The retraining market.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really what we really need to do.
But
But it
that the
even goes.
problem is that every time they try that, it's minimal success. So it's like a huge amount of work and a huge amount of resources. At least in the U.S., they've tried it in a number of different industries: steel, coal, a bunch of different industries. They've tried to do retraining, and the number of people who even complete the retraining process is like below 10%. So I mean, it's a huge amount of effort, and you know, like bringing resources in that is not taken advantage of, and it doesn't result in a markedly different marketplace. So the way it's being done anyway, retraining, it doesn't seem to work very well. So
And to that point, just to underline it, and then say why it's the future's doubly problematic, right? It's not just those blue collar jobs like driving stuff around, but Anime is talking about trade adjustment assistance, which is basically a fund of money to retrain just the workers that Anime talked about, people who are losing jobs from trade and exporting jobs overseas. And the program needs a rehaul because it's not really that great numbers wise. But in addition, folks, if you look into GPT-3 and then the future iterations and the technology that Microsoft and other people are working on, people who work in PR, this technology already could put me out of a job today. It has the ability to essentially write press releases, write stories that you wouldn't know is from a human or not. And what they're also doing, I hear all this retraining. They are now training GPT-3, and Microsoft, I want to say, sunk 500 million or a billion into it recently, an article 2 weeks ago, to take away coding jobs. They're now training AI, natural language processing, to ultimately code as well as humans. And those are two areas where you can just basically wipe out a lot of the grunt work and lower level employees through automation and just have some type of quality check by a person who's seeing the strategy, seeing the work, and then implementing what's done by the computers. And that's going to be very difficult for us to kind of reconcile moving
I'm bringing
forward.
up
And hopefully
Jean-Francois to
lawmakers
help us get
keep an
some
eye to the future.
perspective here. Jean-Francois, how long will it be before Justin's out of a job due to an AI, which you've been working with for a very long time? There you go, Justin. Fill
3
out
to
that
5 years.
TikTok resume now.
Justin,
I'm
this
never
this
coming
is
back here.
No,
yeah
no,
this
just
little club of yours here on Clubhouse. It was not a
yes.
side
Yep.
hustle anymore. It's not a
He will
side
be a
hustle.
very,
You better
very,
do
very,
something with it now.
But by the way,
very, very successful content creator, Justin.
So Cal's telling me no
Jean-Francois,
more days off.
essentially,
Yeah, no,
whenever
I think you got to
GPT-4
take this
comes
no
out,
side.
that's it.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be replace journalists, essentially. And and that's 3 to 5 years away, and that's what your guesstimate is, because GTP GPT-4 will replace journalists, and because as Justin correctly said, admittedly, concededly, GPT-3 is not far off actually. And we read an article here 2 weeks ago that was written by GPT-3 and published by a publisher, and the headline was, "A computer wrote this article," and then the computer wrote the article, and it was a yeah, 3 to 5 years, GPT-4,
Journals, technical
all the yeah.
journals.
I don't know.
I see the ads. I see the ads on my Facebook. It's called Jarvis AI.
I,
Yeah.
I can like 2 weeks, 1 month ago, we talked about Illuture AI. That was a kind of open source GPT-3, and I've worked with it, and it's creating
Wow.
better poem than me. I can just read you I will just read
Hang
you
on,
the model
Jean-Francois.
build.
Let's
It's called, the model
wait.
is
Let's do
GPT
this. Read us two poems,
J6B.
one that you wrote, one that the AI
Yeah.
wrote, and we will guess which one you wrote and which one the AI wrote.
Okay, well, I will have to wrote mine, but I already have
Okay.
those one made by the AI. But okay, I will do one exercise. I will do just one that is really simple, and like I can create a AI model for like 1,001 in about like 10 hours. So there's no problem with it. So I will just read just fastly how it is, so you can see how good it is already. So it's number 3. It really doesn't feel alive. So it's the AI that create the text. So I will read it. He really doesn't feel alive. He feels like he's just a computer. He is so useless. He will bring us down. So it's better he's destroyed. He's a waste of space, a worthless pile of stone. There's no value in him. He's a soulless freak. He's just a machine. Let's blow him up. He's not worth anything. He is an idiot. So what I've just read, it's only AI, only the model that create all the text and then just make sense of it, out of it, and put it together, and then it's like created in like approximately 1 minute with
Okay.
like the model
So
that we built it.
we got now 10 minutes to run through 20 headlines. So let's do. Thank you for this, Jean-Francois. And we.
Tyler, after your thing, I have a
Yeah.
very, very interesting
What's that?
that's about to happen today that you might find interesting. Very interesting. So I just want to say, I don't know if you guys know, but this is, I think you'll find interesting. Today is going to be, I don't think it happened yet, but it's happening today. But the UN Security Council is meeting for the
Yes.
Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt dam dispute. And Ethiopia and Egypt, Sudan have not been able to negotiate about this dam. And as we know, the future wars or the future problems is water.
Get
Water is
out
going
of
to be the
here. Who
most
told you that?
important resource as we're going. And the thing about this, so the thing about this is that what's interesting is they've had, if you guys have been following,
Correct.
for over 10 years, they've been having thousands of talks. No
No, because
mark. They
it's
can't meet
about the
any
most
type of
critical resource
negotiation.
on the
Now,
planet. It's about their
Ethiopia
own
keeps
ability
mentioning,
to actually exist. So there isn't going to be any compromise on either side. They're both caught. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, so there's another thing Ethiopia argues besides just Ethiopia promising them you'll still get water, because you have to understand Ethiopia has a lot of rainy season, so most of their water that they're getting is from the rain, and also because you can't even contain all the water's too powerful, it would blow up the dam. You would they can only the turbines they release it's gradual. So you can't just the type of water they're talking about Ethiopia's gonna hold back is unrealistic. And the engineers have even given the Egyptians, if you like, here's some information, some data analysts. They said nope. I guess because they don't trust the Ethiopian engineers. And then also the Ethiopians said we can't make an agreement because we can't decide for future generations of Ethiopians because the future generation of Ethiopians might not like Egypt. The future generation of Ethiopians might like Egypt. We don't know. We can't decide for them because Ethiopia also has future plans to develop 2 to 4 dams, more dams. So it's getting heated. Egypt, Al-Sisi is threatening, talking about he's going to bomb it. He's made remarks saying he's angry. So it's the Arab states have been of course because Egypt and the Arab League, they have ties with the Middle East. They've been campaigning. Egypt, Sudan, the Arab states have been campaigning to the UN. But in the past, we've had decisions where China, Russia, and India have voted against it. 19 countries have voted with Ethiopia, and then 19 countries, mostly Western, have voted against Ethiopia. But China, Russia, and India have voted with Ethiopia. Of course, China has many investments in Ethiopia, but interestingly, China has many investments in Egypt as well. So it's interesting. But I think, yeah, China values Ethiopia more because they have more heavy investments in Ethiopia. But we'll see. So it's really interesting. I don't know if
Here's
you
the
guys
real
been
question.
following it. The
Who
Egyptians
would
say this is
win in
life
an
or death.
actual hot war
But
between
yeah, go
Sudan
ahead.
plus Egypt would obviously win in a war against Ethiopia. Obviously.
So that's the thing. That's the thing about Ethiopia. This is the interesting. Well, if we're talking about past times, Ethiopia has never won to Egypt. One. Number two, if we're talking about now, of course, because of the generous aid they get from the U.S., they do have a stronger air force. They do have stronger drones, tanks, etc., etc. But the one thing that Egypt does not have is they won't attack Ethiopia directly because they know that would be a big problem.
No.
And
They
so
obviously
they're gonna
will
they're gonna
if
attack
they're not
Ethiopia
getting the water
through
that they
Sudan.
need. If it becomes a matter of life and death, then of course they will attack.
Yes, through
The
Sudan
first
though.
thing they
It'll
will
be
do
through
is bomb
Sudan.
the dam. By the way, we don't have
Yeah,
to
that's what I'm saying,
assume
but
that they
not
will. They
directly. They
already
do
said that they
and
will.
Oh
it
yeah,
goes
yeah.
even,
No, no. But
Tyler,
what
and
I'm
just
saying
real
is, it's
quick
going to
to add
be.
some context, which is very important that wasn't added here. Ethiopia right now is involved in what could be characterized not
As a
only as a
genocide.
civil war, they're also involved in ethnic war within their country, and
Yeah,
also Eritrea is involved in the war. So there's like
yes.
Yes,
ongoing conflict
yes,
without
yes.
Egypt.
Nothing. Yes, yes. I think you need to spell the word out there. So Ethiopia right now is going through an ethnic cleansing with the Tigray population, right? And the thing
No,
is,
that's not what I said.
no,
That's
you
not
didn't
what's
say that.
happening. We had a
That's
No,
not what's
2-hour
happening,
conversation with a
Korean.
former top U.S.
no,
diplomat going
no.
through
So
this,
let
Karen.
me
But if
tell
you
you what
want
it
to
is. Look,
educate me, go ahead.
no, no. So let me tell you what it is. So there is the gentleman who just giving an update. He said something about China has a lot of investment. You know, there is this funny thread going on amongst China. Is that Sri Lanka had a similar, exactly what's going on with Ethiopia and Tigray. So they do have this kind of strategic places where they either need a land or they have a certain, factories where they need a lot of water. So they make all this early investment, and what they do is they tell these guys, Ethiopian, you know what, you go and do whatever you need to do to these ethnic minorities, whatever it is, we'll protect you in the United Nations when it comes to war crimes, and because they have the veto power, right? They did that in Sri Lanka, and they managed to get a 99 years lease over a land because they supported Sri Lanka coming into UN. Every time they were pushed against a genocide, they voted against it. So the point here is that China always play this card. So I think you got to keep China's, away from the way what is happening in the local politics. So Ethiopia is just doing this thing with Tigray, and they need China to support them. That's pretty much what it is. All the investment it makes, none of that makes
So
any sense.
let me
No,
give
no, but
let me give
real
you
quick,
some.
it's hold
Let
on.
me,
It's really
go ahead.
important. Just to and sorry, the Pan African. I'll let you go in a second. Pan Africa. It's really important. Just take China out of this. Tyler was asking, what would the dynamics of a war between Egypt and Ethiopia look like? I'm trying to express that there's already a war going on in Ethiopia through 3 different ethnic factions within the country. There are atrocities, mass atrocities, being committed on all sides. And to add into that, Eritrea, sorry for my pronunciation, is also involved in that war, which has decades of fighting on the border of Ethiopia over an arbitrary border that really hasn't switched through decades of war. So if there were to be another aspect of this conflict, the first and most direct impact we would see is a humanitarian crisis that far outweighs what's going on right now. And more specifically, the U.S. really isn't involved right now in the current ongoing conflict, and all the sides in Ethiopia are lobbying for U.S. support, but we've kind of taken a step back and we're trying to assess what's going on so that we can then provide humanitarian support and hopefully help quell the tension. So I
So
did want to clarify.
Justin, one of the things that you need to understand, I lived on the ground where China get involved in this kind of stuff. So there won't be any humanitarian. There will be a humanitarian crisis because the press loves that thing about whenever the Ethiopian is going to be pushing towards Tigray, there's going to be people crossing the border. Yes, CNN, CNBC, all of this kind of Fox News, they love this thing. There is about 100,000 people crossing the border, but when China is involved, that shit get quickly washed out. In Sri Lanka, it happened the same thing. The news was only about 2 months. In the third month, there's about 60,000 people killed. The whole thing is over. Let's get on with the economic development. So that's what's going to happen to Ethiopia. So I'm just laying out the ground for. So you are right. There will be a humanitarian crisis. It'll be a short-lived because you got the support of the bigger father, which is China. They will sort the shit out, and that'll be quick, and world will move on.
So Karen, I've been following this very carefully. So just to set it straight, what happened in Ethiopia right now, there's a ceasefire. So that's going on in Ethiopia, the civil war you're talking about, it was a previous government that now is considered a terrorist group that's guerrilla fighting, that has been stealing billions of dollars from the country before, that has killed people before for the past 30 years, and the government has been going to war with them. They've been hiding in the Tigray region. They've attacked a federal military base. That's how the war started. So imagine if Texas attacked a U.S. Navy federal military base. You just can't do that. So, yep, and that's what happens. And that, just to keep it short, it would be long if I told you the whole story, but that's the main root cause. Yes, there has been atrocities. Yes, there has been, but there's been aid that's been going in. You have to also understand the TPLF, which was the previous government, they had strong lobbyists. For example, the World Health Organization, the head of the World Organization, he's Ethiopian, and guess what? He's a member of the TPLF, which was the previous government, who are now considered a terrorist organization. So they have strong ties in the U.S. You've had Susan Rice and Obama, who said they've had fair elections. They've been rigging elections for the past 30 years, and they've supported them. So the U.S., the thing about the TPLF is they've been doing everything of the U.S. interests. You have to also remember that Ethiopia has been doing a lot of U.S. peacekeeping missions for the U.S. One of the most countries to do U.S. peacekeeping missions for the U.S. U.S. had a drone base. They were fighting war on terror, Al-Shabaab for the U.S. So this new government doesn't really care to do U.S. interests. That's the problem. It's not because the U.S. loves Ethiopia and the Tigrayan people. You have to understand U.S. for their interests. For
I don't
example, like
think the
you see
U.S.
their clue
the
with
U.S.
Saudi
doesn't.
Arabia, but Saudi Arabia is
It's
bombing the
good
shit out
if
of Yemen. So
as soon
we got to think about
as
interests. It's
soon
about
as
interests, not
Egypt doesn't
because
get
they care
enough
about the
water,
people.
they're going to bomb the
Go
dam.
ahead.
End of story. It's as simple as that. America doesn't need to get involved.
They will.
But
And
Tyler, let me
Taylor,
give you
they
context.
they
They
already
can't bomb the
have.
dam. You want to know why? I'll tell you why they can't bomb the dam. It would be a suicide mission because right now we're at the second filling as we speak. It's getting full. If they bomb it, they will literally flood and kill a million Sudanese and Egyptians. So that'd be a suicide bomb. It's like they're at a
No,
tight grip.
no.
Ethiopia has an advantage for one.
It's a threat,
Number
right?
two,
It's a
if they were
threat
to
to
if they were
You're
to bomb it
implying
right now,
removing the
all
dam
it takes is
entirely. I'm
Ethiopia
not.
to bomb
I'm saying
this.
a strategic amount of C4 placed on the corner of the dam, not to blow up the entire dam.
Mhm. Yeah, and also you have to also understand
Can I chip in?
Ethiopia
Yeah,
has
that's right.
bought many weapons from Israel, anti-defense air missile systems and spiders that can counter those drones and missiles that they're going to launch. So Ethiopia has bought the
Interesting.
necessary right by the
Okay.
dam just in case it gets bombed. So
Hey, Pan
Ethiopia
African,
has
Pan
I
everything.
just
Africa, can we
wonder,
get a
like,
view? Pan Africa, 1 second. Heyman, 1 second.
yeah,
Pan Africa, Messi, she's in
yeah.
Ethiopia too. Can we just, Messi, go ahead.
No,
Yeah, just to give you some context, first of all, I think there are many dams going on, but they are not all being filled by the Nile. Ethiopia has like plenty of rivers, so some of them are being filled in by other rivers. It's only the Great Renaissance Dam that's being filled from the Nile. And the other thing is also, I mean, 85% of the Nile has been flowing into Egypt. So there isn't any evidence that they're not going to get water, just to point that out. And part of the problem also with the negotiation it has been going on for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years since it has been started. And Egypt doesn't really want to be on the table because the very first thing that's what they are trying to do is just to stop it. And then later on, they try to do the filling that can go into 7 years instead of the 4 to 7 years Ethiopia is trying to do, but Egypt is trying to get it 10 or more years to fill the dam. But like someone mentioned right now, yes, the second filling in is happening already, and Sudan was part of the negotiation and now wasn't part of it. So they are trying to get them back to on the table. So hopefully we are not going to get into the bombing. But in terms of the civil war that has been happening, yes, it is the fighting is between the former government and the current government. And right now, as we speak, they do have the ceasefire, and we are all hoping. I'm in Addis, in the capital city, so I'm not in the border of Tigray, so I don't really see what's happening on the ground on the Tigray. But there is a ceasefire so that the humanitarian assistance can go in, the UN and other organizations can do the distribution of medicine and food and things like that. So hopefully we can extend that ceasefire and can get into the longer term negotiation. So
Thank you,
I
Messi.
hope that gives some context
Okay.
from the ground. This is
Messer,
Yeah.
Mesman.
what's the natural ally
Heyman,
of?
1 second. No, I
Yeah,
think Tyler, I just want to ask one question before we move on. Just Pan Africa, you've been welcome to Clubhouse. You've been on this room a couple of times now. Can I just ask you, do you and I'll respect your answer. You are not a person, you're an organization as far as I look at your profile. Are you actually an organization representing a whole bunch of people, or are you just anonymous for personal security reasons or whatever? It just let us know so we understand your context when you bring a
I'm a
point of view.
person that represents the organization.
And
So
and is there a reason why you are anonymous? If it is, fine, but do tell us if you're deliberately anonymous or
because
did,
it's because of company rules. I can't you can't put your personal thing on
company.
here. Just you just have to represent the company.
okay, all right,
Yeah.
thanks.
Sorry, is there like company? It's the same question I was going to ask earlier too, because I think because when you voice your opinions without a personal ID or anything, and also even your Instagram does not have any really information there. I'm just wondering, like, we don't know, right? This is supposed to be a social platform where everyone shares information, and we don't want anyone to sort of sway, basically like a lobby,
Well,
right?
he might. There's
In this
parts of the
forum.
world where he could say the things he wants to say, not necessarily.
Yeah, it may be. There
True,
may be a
true.
legit reason. There may be a legit reason for doing it. I just want to point it out to, and
Yeah.
just
Okay,
give him
so
an option to tell
I
us
want
what it's about.
to
Thanks.
go
Yeah,
through
thanks.
some headlines here. So um, Sid just found one, but I think Sid is over at the AI News. He is. But it's about infrared cameras and AI uncovered the physics of boiling, which I just retweeted. Boiling is not just for heating up dinner, it's also for cooling things down. Turning liquid into gas removes energy from hot surfaces. And some very amazing images of boiling water and such. And JT, you found another amazing one today about Google launches augmented reality filters on their Meet app for mobile. So now when you're talking with a friend, you can turn them into a cat essentially, or any other three-dimensional object you can place on top of their head. Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to make it more social by integrating these
Yeah.
filters and essentially try to compete with Snapchat,
Facebook
who
Messenger
already
as
has
well on the
filters, and
video
then
calls has this kind
Apple,
of stuff.
etc.
And then Amazon helping to launch pop-up vaccination sites. Amazon and Carbon Health will provide vaccinations through a mobile pop-up effort in New York and LA, and they're going to be giving you vaccines. Interesting there. And then Evan, you found one that speaking of vaccines, Royal Caribbean's 4,275 passenger called the Freedom of the Seas has resumed cruises from Miami to the Bahamas with two classes of passengers on board: those who have been vaccinated and those who have not. Lovely, brilliant. Yes, the freedom to be a
Should call it freedom
dumbass.
to catch
Jump
COVID.
on board. All aboard.
Is this the worst idea ever? Like the COVID acknowledges the two classes of passengers. I mean, what
Freedom
a
to be
stupid idea.
stupid. My grandpappy died, so I could be a dumbass. So, the NFL and Twitter expand their partnership to include 20 plus Twitter Spaces live audio chats next season. And this is interesting because this relates to Clubhouse, where Clubhouse also did some kind of partnership with the NFL and the NHL. But this says that the NFL and Twitter have renewed their content partnership. Under the multi-year deal extension, the NFL is making a full season commitment to produce exclusive content on Twitter Spaces, the social network's new live audio feature. The NFL is the first sports league to partner with Twitter to offer sponsored Twitter Spaces, with plans for more than 20 spaces for upcoming. And what I want to know is who's paying who in this. The NFL's Twitter Space will be available throughout the season, as well as in conjunction with the league's tentpole events, including the Super Bowl and the NFL Draft. The seasons will include participation from current NFL players and other NFL talent, discussing key matchups and providing analysis. That's where these spaces start to become competitive with TV channels, by the way. So, of note, the NFL was the first sports league to team up with Clubhouse, the live audio chat app that is being challenged by copycat features from Twitter, Facebook, and Spotify. Here's the quote: "The commitment to Twitter Spaces represents another innovative step forward in the long-standing partnership between the NFL and Twitter. We're excited to bring NFL fans a new way to engage with live audio ahead of our biggest events of the year and every week throughout the NFL season. Under the deal renewal, Twitter will continue to host NFL games highlights, including all touchdowns and notable plays right after they happen, as well as on-field coverage of the season kickoff of the Super Bowl. Twitter also will feature sponsorable curated videos with recaps of the best touchdowns, highlights, and tweets each week of the regular season. In addition, NFL will expand its use of Twitter polls to invite fans to vote each week on the hottest topics. The weird bit is that none of this is organic. This is all like manufactured content, and someone's paying somebody. We're excited to super serve NFL fans with even more of what they love to see on Twitter, including epic touchdown highlights all season long, said TJ Adeshola, Twitter's head of U.S. sports partnerships. In addition to fueling the timeline with the best moments from each game in real time, we'll be doubling down on innovation by leveraging our live audio format spaces to bring fans even closer to the game. How much are they paying the NFL for this is what I want to know. It seems like Twitter's paying for content. Very interesting.
I think that just to add on real quick, I think the real threat is not TV, but it's actually AM, FM radio, sports radio. And I think that this, I don't want to be too harsh, but Clubhouse already had a partnership with the NFL.
True.
This does not bode well
Heyman,
for
you found an
sports.
article, erectile dysfunction could be a symptom of COVID, long COVID.
Yeah, I was trying to convince people about
Thank
this
God
back
for
in
that.
April
Thank
and
God for that.
June. April and June, we were trying to get people to wear their masks at that time and trying to convince people that there were blood clots being seen in post-mortem studies. And now they're saying, yes, there is. So basically, patients have said they've actually found that long COVID patients are having erectile dysfunction. Now, erectile dysfunction is a multi it's a syndrome. It could be due to so many things. Like long COVID also causes fatigue. It also causes depression and all these other symptoms as well. So it could be that too. But we
Dr.
know
Heyman,
blood clots have been found.
this is exactly what we needed. Population
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
declining. U.S. testosterone is falling down. Erectile dysfunction. Young people have stopped having sex. I mean, boy, this COVID brought out the worst of what is this, Tyler?
So no wonder our Olympics has no condoms, right, distributed. Hopefully they're trying to create the super race, as someone said before.
Oh no, they are distributing, but they're just letting them use at home, not in
Here's a
Yes,
public.
condom.
not
Don't
at the
use it
Olympic
until you
Players.
get home. It's it's a Japanese way.
Oh,
Right. Yeah, virile young athletes there
I have not.
packed in a.
I have a public service announcement related to this. I've just tweeted at TNATW. Japan is offering free online virtual tour that you can view from the comfort of your home over the Airbnb Japan website, and they are hosted by the Tokyo Olympic volunteers. So please enjoy yourself. You
Okay.
traveling Japan virtually from the
Okay.
comfort of
So
your home.
a
Stay
restaurant in
safe.
Singapore recently served the world's first lab-grown chicken nuggets. Real chicken breast tissue grown in a lab, grown from animal cells. The nuggets taste like chicken because they are made from actual real chicken in a lab without a physical chicken being born. The lab-grown chicken is only available in Singapore through regulatory agencies, and other countries are considering approval. It has never been easier to find a meat substitute at your local restaurant. Plant burgers and seitan poultry are increasingly available as solutions to the ethical, environmental, and economic problem of meat production. Now, a new option has come along, lab-grown chicken. This cultured meat offers the most promise for those looking to keep the taste and texture of real meat without the baggage. And now it's in restaurants for the first time ever. Why no?
Oh no. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there is this KFC lab-grown chicken, I think it's a rumor, and everybody was like crazy over it and stopped eating KFC at that time. But now, 30 years later, they actually make it official. But I
Why?
still prefer my real chicken rice. Thank you.
This is
Because
identical
I want to eat real food.
identically, molecularly identical. Right.
No, but they have to declare it is from the lab,
Why not?
right? Yeah, so I won't eat it.
She wants to kill the chicken, Tyler.
It's just my preference.
It's
Hey, by the way, related to this news, US also launched this plant-based.
Try to change the topic, Cheryl. Why not the lab chicken?
Okay.
Why do you want
We'll
the
try.
dead chicken?
It's
eat
good debate.
cage-free chicken in
Why?
Japan.
Wait. This gets more interesting by the minute. Why cage-free chicken?
I want my chicken with extra beaks.
Why you prefer cage-free chicken, right?
Huh?
But you don't like chickens in cages. Why?
Free range.
Jidori. Yep.
Well, guess
Because
what?
they're all the
They don't
injection, right?
the lab
No,
chickens
Yep.
don't have
injections is a
injections
big
either.
scam.
It is real meat.
But it's not real meat.
It is to everybody.
To you, but not to me.
It's just amino acids. It's protein.
Enjoy.
They put the vaccine in the chickens in the lab.
So is it only real if the thing that you're eating, let's just by implication, by deduction here, the
Pooped.
thing that you're eating was walking, was what we consider to be alive in some sense, and then we killed it, and then that's only when it's real meat. Is that
Doesn't
the definition
It's a,
of real
it,
meat?
Yeah, if
it's
it's
evolution, Tyler. It's
Wait,
evolution,
one
Tyler.
second. Is that yes? Is that
it,
Cheryl?
it
Is
has
that
to
how
have,
we would define real meat?
well, if it's a meat or a fish, it has to be from a living thing, and then then you get into your
And then
tummy,
it's
right?
died, and then okay,
it
fair
pooped
enough.
as well, so that's key.
It's good to do a blind test and
There's
find
no
out
difference
how
in the blind test.
good
It's the same exact
production
thing.
chicken.
We're still
Money for
hunters. We like to
3D
kill things,
printed chicken at
Tyler.
home.
It's like testing two waters.
3D
You have
printed
a
chicken.
blind taste testing water, which I've done, by the way. But and there are differences in waters, especially spring water, mountain water, municipal water. But in this chicken, there is no difference. It's just actual, real molecular biological
Fuji-san,
chicken. I did
have
the
you
meat. And in
tried?
fact, I brought the company who invented
Have you
this
tried?
technology to my event in Sweden, where he met Nicholas Zenstrom from Skype and Atomico, who then brought in Bill Gates and Richard Branson to invest, which they did. Yeah, but now they started off doing meat, and now they're doing the chicken, and now the chicken's being sold in Singapore.
Oh
Apparently, the
no.
best taking bacons they have just meat, right? They recently have a
Well,
bacon
it can be
which apparently
far
tastes
better
much better than
because
real bacon.
animals have a very difficult time controlling their omega-3 versus their omega-6 fats. And you get too much omega-6 fats, which are unhealthy for you. Omega-3 fats are healthy for you. And in the lab, you can engineer the fat profile of the chicken to be actually far, far healthier for you.
Will your
If you
gut
look at
microbiome change?
if you look at my last tweet, Tyler and Cheryl, you'll never want to eat another real chicken again. That's
Okay, we won't look at it then.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you some good
No
news then.
thanks.
Let me give you some good news. In the UK, has passed. Well, they're looking into legally recognizing sentient beings as basically animals with spines. Or its bill being debated in Parliament basically has moved forward. So this is actually to help people provide legal protections for animals with feelings. I just tweeted that article out for you.
Are
Oh,
you a
nice.
vegetarian or vegan?
Me? No. I like my meats, but I might be tending towards vegetarianism now. I don't know. After seeing all this,
if it's an option, right? We
yeah,
don't have options. I like
Yeah,
chicken
but
too,
there
but if
are
I had an
options.
option,
They're
I
great
don't
options.
overconsume. I have a very balanced diet. I don't overconsume. And when I eat meat,
You eat the
chicken, I eat
foot?
every part of the chicken. No wastage. Even the
Okay.
bones, I use it.
I
Even
love
the
the feet.
bones, I use it to boil
Yep.
my soup.
So Utah's
No
Great
wastage.
That
Salt
marrow out
Lake
of the
is in
bone.
trouble with serious ramifications for one of America's fastest growing areas. Why it matters. It's the largest natural lake west of the Mississippi and has been shrinking for years, with a mega drought making it even worse. The lake's levels are expected to hit a 170-year low this year. Wildlife is suffering from the decline, especially birds and shrimp. The waves have been replaced by dry, gravelly lake bed that's grown to 750 square miles. That's large. Winds can whip up dust from the dry lake bed that is laced with naturally occurring arsenic. Tourism is at risk. The dust from the lake bed could speed up snow melt at Utah's popular ski resorts. And then they show old photos of it where it was a very robust lake and it's disappearing. The Great Shrinking Lake. Utah's Great Salt Lake is becoming a shrinking lake. Thank you for that. Google feared Samsung Galaxy Store and tried to squash it. The lawsuits allege. And this is all about the fact that Google has a kind of a dominant monopoly of their own Google store. And Samsung tried to make a store, the Samsung Galaxy Store, and the report is now that Google tried to kill it because they want to keep their monopoly on the Google Play Store. Google used anti-competitive practices in an attempt to preemptively squash Samsung's Galaxy Store and prevent it from becoming a viable competitor to its own Play Store. That's according to an antitrust suit filed by a coalition of 36 state attorney generals, which accuses Google of illegally attempting to control app distribution on Android. The suit also alleges Google paid off app developers to stop them circumventing its stores, meaning they were sideloading, going direct to their users, and Google paid them to go through the store. The allegations challenge one of Google's core defenses of its policies, which is that, unlike Apple, Android allows both competing app stores and side-loading apps directly, meaning they would allow Samsung to have their own app store, and they would allow developers to go through the side, and the lawsuit says, no, you lying fuckers, you don't do that. You tried to kill Samsung when they had their store, and you paid app developers who try to do direct downloads, and you paid them off. You're lying fucking sacks of shit. That's what the attorney generals are telling Google to their face. And that's why we're suing the shit out of you. You fucking liars. And where you're going to pay. You're going to burn. You're going to burn Google burn. And we're going to get you. You're done. You're toast. We have the evidence that you are, what you claim and what you do are two different things. And shit's going to hit your fucking fan, Google. Hold on to your pants. That's essentially what the attorney generals are telling. I'm just translating from Washington, D.C. legal speak into common day vernacular. Go ahead, Heyman.
Right.
Yeah. These kids don't speak Heyman. Come on. When was the last? Kids don't speak legalese. This lawyerese, type language that these lawyers use, they don't get it. So I just got to break it down for the kids so they understand what it's saying. Here's the quote. Google felt deeply threatened when Samsung began to revamp its own app store, the Samsung Galaxy Store, the suit says, and describes Google's approach to the competing store as a threat it needed to preemptively squash. The suit outlines a range of tactics Google allegedly used to prevent Samsung's store from becoming a viable competitor. It claims Google used revenue share agreements with Android phone manufacturers that outright prohibited pre-installing some of other app stores, and that it made a direct attempt to pay Samsung to abandon relationships with top developers and scale back competition through the Samsung Galaxy Store. So they got the receipts, and they're going to bring them to the courthouse, and they're going to show the receipts, and then the judge is going to slam the gavel and say, Google, you guys are a bunch of lying fucking sacks of shit. You guys are trying to fuck everybody over, and we got you. We got you, and here's the proof. It's on tape in the emails. And they actually do have the email. They actually have receipts that show that Google did this. And they're going to say, Google, explain yourself. You can't get the fuck out of here. You're guilty as charged. You're going to pay about $3 million. And Google's going to say, oh my God, $3 million. Where are we going to get that? How will we ever get $3 million together? That's what's going to happen. So,
you kiss your mother with
I'm just breaking it down for the kids, Justin. The kids need to know what's really going on. And we covered the birth control natural cycles. Lovely team. Congrats to them. And then Kuram sent in one that exclusive Q&A Neuralink's quest to beat the speed of type is the article from the IEE Spectrum. And this is really geeky shit. An inside engineering look at the brain implant company's near and far term goals of plugging a cable into your brain so that you don't need to use your fingers to type anymore, and so that you can order those chicken wings without even moving your fingers. You just think about those chicken wings. You just think, I want chicken wings, and then poof, they show up at your door 30 minutes later. Elon Musk's brain technology company Neuralink is subject to rampant speculation and misunderstanding. Just start a Google search with the phrase, can Neuralink ... and you'll see the questions that are commonly asked, which include, can Neuralink cure depression? Can Neuralink control you? Can Neuralink order me chicken wings? That's what I want to know. Musk hasn't helped ground the company's reputation in reality with his public statements, including his claim that Neuralink device will one day enable AI symbiosis, in which a human brain will merge with artificial intelligence. And then at that point, you can order all the chicken wings you want at that point. It's all somewhat absurd because the Neuralink brain implant is still an experimental device that hasn't yet gotten approval for even the most basic clinical functions and trials. And that's right. And there's no point in reading the article beyond that, because that's where it is. But I did tweet out the article so that you can do the deep dive your damn self about how to order chicken wings with your mind. And then, Heyman, you sent in this one about India opens its vaccination platform to the world.
Yeah, no. So they have got this a great little app basically that records like vaccinations and also provides a passport eventually. And what they did was they actually opened it up as open source and allowed the world to use it. It's called Coven, is the product, and it's out of their Digital India initiative, and it's apparently the crown jewel of that initiative. So they've actually done a public good. That's what they call it, the digital public good.
That's okay. Let's hold that thought for tomorrow. Animesh, thank you. But you can see a photo of this passport, India's vaccine passport kind of thing. Dr. Danish has one about a new form of non-medical contraception that uses wearables and AI, gets FDA approval. Prediction: we will see a flurry of startups using similar strategies to disintermediate the legacy health systems. Birth control via wearables gets a major stamp of approval from the FDA. And they talk about my buddy's natural cycles. Kudos to them. Evan, you shared one about 6 vaccinated countries have high COVID infection rates. 5 of them rely on the Chinese Sinovac. Womp, womp, womp. What's going on? Are you saying Sinovac isn't as effective? Is that what's really going on? What a huge headline that nobody ever saw coming. 6 vaccinated countries have high COVID infection rates. 5 of them rely on Sinovac. Vaccines made in China face rising doubts about their efficacy, compounded by a lack of data on their protection against more transmissible Delta variation, which is why Thailand's in the news today. A court in Thailand just busted the health minister or whoever ordered a shit ton of Sinovac, and the judge today is trying to get that order canceled, knowing that it's useless for the Delta variation, which is the dominant variation in Thailand. And the judge even said, "Are you a dumb shit? Why are you ordering something that won't even work? Why are we even wasting our hard-earned money on this crap? Get us the good stuff." Okay.
Check Dr. Francis' text. Tweet
there were so many. What do you mean?
Sinovac lead dies.
Lead Sinovac vaccine scientist in Indonesia dies of suspected COVID. I couldn't. I mean, I was trying to make a point, Heyman. I was just trying to make a point, and you have to come and drop the hardest. That's the hardest. Wow. I'm speechless. Holy cow. I was just trying to make a simple point, Heyman. You didn't have to go full throttle on making the point that the Sinovac is not what. Jesus, Heyman.
This is Tyler.
Boom. Oh, TikTok is a fiction. Yeah, TikTok is officially more addictive than YouTube. There, the data shows it, and I'm retweeting it. I just twatted it, so you can see my twat in your Twitter right now at TNATW. TikTok is officially more addictive than YouTube, report reveals. Pound for pound, Americans now spend more time watching TikTok than the equivalent session on YouTube. A new report shows App Analytics from App Annie regularly evaluates the most popular apps in the State of Mobile report. The report tracks trends in consumer behavior. This report found that Americans who use Android phones spend more time on TikTok per session than on YouTube. Those Americans spend an average of 24.5 hours in TikTok every month. That's compared with only 22 hours per month they spend in YouTube. That's a difference of more than 10%, a gulf that appears to be widening. Examining past State of the Mobile reports reveal just how fast TikTok's monthly engagement is growing. And now you know why you see cute little TikTok-style videos when you open your YouTube app now, because they don't want to lose to TikTok. In December, Americans spent just 16 hours per month on TikTok. TikTok engagement is also growing faster than Facebook based on this app analytics report. And do you know why they're growing faster? Because they have a better recommendation algorithm to show you the best content that's most relevant to you. The AI team wins, even within big tech companies. The team who has a better AI and the better recommendation algorithms is going to win. They all win when they compete with newspapers who have no artificial intelligence engineers, but when they compete with each other, whoever has the best recommendation algorithm wins. And that's why Spotify is going to kick Tidal's ass, because they're going to give you better songs, because they have the data, they have the talent to make the better recommendation algorithm. Instawork is a startup in San Francisco, which has now raised $60 million, connecting local businesses like restaurants with qualified professionals. That's your lazy cousin who needs a job across the U.S. And so they just raised $60 million to connect businesses with people who are looking for work in a very Tinder-like way. And the round, which the total funding of $100 million, the company intends to use the funds to continue expanding into new markets, job categories, and industries, while also investing in more training and development initiatives to allow hourly professionals to advance their careers. And through Instawork, pros can register to share their work experience and skills, access a variety of available short-term and long-term job opportunities that match their qualifications, interests, and schedules. And this is the future of job postings. It's Tinder for jobs. As I said earlier, that TikTok is doing jobs where you post your own TikTok video as a resume. And now this app, Instawork, is doing the app that I said is a huge opportunity. And they just raised $100 million to build it. Tinder for jobs. Well done, guys. You did it. We did it, everybody. We fixed the fucking internet. We're out of here. We will see you all tomorrow and bring some headlines. And thank you to everybody. And we're going to go over to the Thursday AI room with our friends Ben and Jean-Francois and Sid and Dave and Ramen. We will see you all there and see you next time. Have a wonderful Thursday, everybody. And see you tomorrow on Friday. Bye-bye.